the regular school committee meeting of Wednesday, June 21st, 2017, Cohasset School Committee. Could I have a roll call, please?
Present Barbara Steffen.
Present Katie Dugan.
Present Gina Stino.
Present Ellen Mar.
Present Jen Madden.
And we will now say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next is invitation to speak. But I'm guessing since there's no one really in the audience other than administrators and our reporter, there will be no public comment section. So the next item is the warrant. And do I have a motion to approve warrant 17-26S?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, roll call please.
I, Barbara Steffen.
I, Katie Dugan.
Aye, Gina Stino.
I abstain, Ellen Mar.
I, Jen Madden.
Okay. Next is middle high school news, but we do not have a student representative because they're probably out celebrating that there are only 2 more days of school. And soon the administrators will be celebrating also.
Ooh, can I, if Jane were here,
Yes.
can I highlight one thing she would highlight?
Oh,
She's an awesome
She's an awesome goalie, and they won the, what do we?
State
champions.
Yeah, I don't get my
State
sections.
champions.
Yes, and I know the girls are awesome, and I know Cully is just a out of control, awesome coach, and that was very exciting, so congratulations. I was
Good.
looking forward to hearing Jane's commentary on that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if she's gonna come and give it to us in the
I know,
summer,
we'll have
but
to wait.
we can certainly invite her.
If you went to the beach, you might be able to get it.
Yeah, there you go, maybe we could record it. We could
John
do
gave you a pretty enthusiastic summary.
We could do the roving reporter at the beach.
Yeah,
I'll be there.
Okay, okay, well, you can be there. All right, so next is the finance section, so take it away, John.
Sure. So I guess the first thing we'll talk about is F1, which is the grants. We're coming to the end of the grant year. We will close out, and we will be positive. As you can see, we have a couple of negative items in terms of balance. If you look at the far right-hand corner, those are all attributable to timing. We got our payment on the 6th of June, and so on the 6th of June, we got 4 payments totaling $64,000, $64,207 to be specific. And so all of the items that are in negative, that all balance out to minus $92, are all in positive. We received $400 for the 140 grant, $33,000 for the 240 grant, and $14,000 for the Metro grant, and that was in anticipation of what is our 4th payment for transportation, which was actually made. It's on the, in fact, it's on the warrant that you're signing today. And $15,000 for the Title I grant. So all of those negatives went away.
Okay.
Since we're going to also talk about the end of the year surplus, I guess it takes the drama away from the next part of what you're going to see about, how are we doing. We thought we'd end the year in a positive note, and we did. There were no real major surprises overall that were bad. In reflection, there were some positives that I made note of in the information about the end of the year surplus in the salary accounts. So if we could turn to that information that I sent out on the salary accounts or on the end of the year surplus. Overall, when we add up the projected surplus, and some things could change, but with 2 weeks left to go, it seems not going to be anything major. There's a surplus of $887,000. Now that's not the whole story, because From that, we still know we will pay about $140,000 in the final payroll that comes out on the 29th. We're expecting about $100,000 in utility bills. We're anticipating ordering about $80,000 in teaching supplies, which is consistent with what we've done before, and $49,000 in textbooks. One of the items that I'm suggesting we invest in is in prepaid sped tuition. Now, this year, we had $141,000 in prepaid sped tuition that did not get spent. We had a wonderful year in terms of no surprises. I'm not sure how long we can have those wonderful years of no surprises. And I'm suggesting that we prepaid sped tuitions to the order of $280,000. That certainly would take us through any surprises, and my understanding is a couple of years ago we had some nasty surprises in the area of sped tuition. And then finally, I'm expecting, we need to buy about $3,800 in some custodial equipment, one-time purchases. It's related to the fact that we've now gone in-house and done away with a cleaning company. And finally, $30,000 is just a guesstimate for what we will see in the final warrant of the year. Just, things continue to go on, we continue to pay some bills, those sorts of things. If you look at where the balances came from, if we look at it by program and by personnel and expenses, there are two things that really stand out. One is that overall in SPED, we had $195,000 surplus in out-of-district tuition. And I think, as everybody knows, that can turn around on the drop of a dime. I mean, just today we found out that this was unanticipated, but going into next year, we have a student that will require a 45-day one-on-one aide to be with them as we do some evaluations. Now, it's going to be in-house with a full-time aide for 45 days, as opposed to a 45-day out-of-district placement as we consider the future. Those kinds of things happen. And the surpluses that we see when it comes to personnel are really concentrated in Deer Hill and Osgood.
Yep.
And I think, as you may remember, in both cases, we had some sudden and unexpected departures of teachers for a variety of reasons, and the replacements came in costing less.
Yep.
So with those two notable differences, the prepaid sped tuitions, which we had hoped would be a surplus, as well as the unexpected retirements and other things that happened along the way, we would not have much of a surplus.
And the way to think, is it correct that the way to think about the surplus in out-of-district tuitions, a portion of that, $147,000 to be correct, is basically the roll forward.
The roll forward into the 280.
Exactly, so it's that balance that we roll forward when we can in order to create a mechanism for unanticipated.
The two personnel we lost at Osgood were on top scale. They were unexpected in August. That was
Well, one in
Laura and then Karen.
Karen.
Yep.
Deer Hill was a late retirement. So those were all top scale. That gave us most of our surplus.
And looking forward to next year, I mean, as we sit today, a couple days from the end of school, we don't have a similar situation where we're seeing a level of staff turnover, so we are likely not to have a cushion of that magnitude generated from staff turnover over the summer.
The other thing we have to consider this year is the areas where we need to hire are difficult to fill. When areas are difficult to fill, that also means expense.
Costs more money.
John, on the estimated expenses,
Mm-hmm.
are the teaching supplies and textbooks, we would consider those prepaid?
I would consider those prepaid, yes.
They're for next year,
Yes.
yeah.
It's sort of in keeping with what we've done before in the past,
Okay.
but yes, it is for next year.
I
It's
can
to
al-
it's to restock the shelves.
It's to restock, but also on things that when we were doing budget discussions, there were dire needs, that were not as dire as those that we put in the budget. So this allowed us to take care of some of that before next year.
Mhm.
So it basically is a prepaid, but it's also a gift, so. it's
And
great.
that level that you're recommending, the 80,000 in supplies and $50,000 in textbooks is well within kind of the historical norms.
Within, yes.
You know, as I reflect upon the remaining balance of $200,000, I had a couple thoughts. One is, I think we should, and I talked to John about this, I think we should consider looking at our transportation revolving account. If you guys look, we're sitting at a revolving account balance of $13,000. Last month, we were at $12,000. We had roughly $30,000 in fees come in during the month of May, which we spent to pay for current fiscal year salaries. And so we're gonna repeat that scenario as we close out June, where essentially the fees that we collect are going to help us, you know, pay for a portion of our salaries. And so we will have spent $60,000 in fees that we're collecting for fiscal 18 in fiscal 17 in order to close it out. And that practice has happened this year. It's not a practice, it's a financial, it's the way our finance has been working in transportation, both this year and last year. We've been spending next year's fees in our current fiscal year, 2 years in a row. And it just shows that we're tight when it comes to our transportation account.
But on the flip side, we haven't spent anything out of the operational budget under transportation. There's $30,195, I think, that we, for maintenance, that we haven't spent because we've been spending maintenance out of revolving.
Right.
So I think the two parts of this, and you're right, I mean, where do we spend the money from, but
Yep.
also what do we project for income? So we've been projecting $110,000 for the last several years when it comes to anticipated fees to come in. Right now, or as of June 20th, the total revenue in transportation fees is $104,000. 81,200 of that has come in since May 25th. So those are clearly those are what would be the 18 fees.
I'm sorry,
Next.
what was the amount that came in?
$81,200 has come in since 5/25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because the balance at 13,
Yeah,
so there is a difference, because last year the balance at the end of May was 73,000.
yeah, and the same sort of thing happened last year as well. When I look back at it, there was a big balance swing that happened at the end of the year, and I think it is.
Journal
In this case, it's 18 fees that are coming in at 17. We're paying 17 bills with it. Last year it was 17 fees that came in at the end of fiscal year 16, and we paid 16 bills with it. And it may have started before that as well. So, I mean, having said that, I think it certainly would make sense if we would take some of that anticipated $200,000 surplus and use it to rebuild a revolving fund so that we are paying in the current year with current funds.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
That was my next
Yes.
question.
Yes, we can move salary expense that is in the revolving fund into the budget. And that would have the effect of having a balance at the end of the year.
As I understand it, it's basically a journal entry.
It's a journal entry.
To reverse what has been previously charged to the revolving account for personnel expense and move it back into the operating budget, where we have a surplus of $423,000 in so it's saying that
Yeah.
we could have continued to charge into our operating budget and show in a deficit. We chose not to. We charged it against our transportation account, but John can equally reverse that with a journal entry.
Get it.
So we don't do accrual accounting in the public sector, but we have gotten truly out of whack when it comes to matching expenses and revenues when it comes to this particular revolving fund. And it's been that way for several years. And it's systemic, I mean, it's baked in the cake, we will do this again
Right.
next year unless we take steps to resolve it.
Do you think this is common in other districts also?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that, I think everybody's best practice is to try to come reasonably close to have revenues and expenditures match. And I don't know when this first started, when we got out of balance, but it's continued for several years. And at this point in time, as I say, it's baked in the cake. There's just no way around it until we make that adjustment. We appear to have the funds to do it. If we made that adjustment this year, I think we would be back on an even keel.
Okay.
So what's the number that you think?
I think if we've talked about $60,000 so instead of having a reversion of right now $203,000, would be $143,000.
So all things being equal, 60 on top of the 13 would get us to where we were, kind of like last year, or
It'll get us ahead of where we were. It'll get us ahead of where we were.
ahead of where we were?
Yep.
And it'll get us back to a place where we'll be, as you said, matching the revenue, the fees and the expenses in the
Correct.
current fiscal year instead of robbing Peter to pay Paul in the current fiscal year, which has been happening the last years.
It's been happening, and I don't think we've frankly been aware that it's been happening.
And, you know, as I think about, again, next year, I just know that given that we are not going to be in a situation where we have a cushion generated from staff turnover, you know, we're going to be running tight when it comes to our hiring, our salaries. Salaries could kind of our salary line for next year. There's not a cushion there. I would hate to get pinched in transportation as being our downfall.
Right.
And we will run buses. I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
We won't cancel them.
that's right. We will have an obligation to do it. So in fact, if we run short within the revolving fund, the only option is to come from the budget itself.
Okay.
And if we were to return $140,000 to the town, I guess one of the other questions I had for the committee was, do we want to ask Chris and the Board of Selectmen to consider taking a portion of that and topping off the sped reserve fund from 250 to 280. I mean, our cap under the 2% I think is 289, so you could ask for 25,000, you could ask for 30,000. I think it wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily to top it off. I think it would show continuity of investment in it, and it puts it in place for the future.
So we're at 250 and it's 289, so 39 would go. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying,
Somewhere in that vicinity.
yeah, I'm not sure I would get it to, I mean, I guess we could technically get it to 289. I just worry that if our net, 2% of our net school spending drops below 289 and we're at,
Then we're not in compliance.
we're not in
with the law.
compliance, so I was thinking more, let's get it to 275, which is close
Okay.
enough, and
Right.
then if in FY19 our 2% drops to something lower than 289,
Mhm.
So
Or-
then 25 to sped, and then that leaves 130 that you return to the town?
Yep. And remember, at 120, sorry,
203 minus 60 gets you to 143, minus 25 gets you to 118, I'm sorry, 118.
yep. And if you remember, we did borrow $192,000 from the General Stabilization Fund in order to make the FY17 budget work. So we're returning the vast majority of what we borrowed, thinking we would potentially need.
Anybody else have comments?
I would just, suggest that anything you can prepay You know, is 80,000 sounds like a lot, 49,300 sounds like a lot, but is it a lot?
We're not done yet either, so, you know, that's projected at this point, but.
Well, we wouldn't be voting on this tonight,
Correct.
right?
No.
Because we don't have final numbers.
Well, we don't have final numbers, but I guess I'm asking for direction.
You're
I'm
looking for the
asking
authority to
That's
move
right,
the money.
To move forward, to move forward. I mean, $80,000 is certainly a serious amount of money, and there's no question about it. In terms of the budget, I mean, we have a $18 million budget. $80,000 as a percentage is less than 1% of the total budget.
Right, and I didn't bring the FY18 budget with me, but what is the 80,000 as a percent of the budget, of the teaching supplies
Of the
budget?
teaching supply item,
I think we're, off the top of my head, I think, supplies and textbook, I wanna say is like 325 in total. It's pretty meaningful. It's setting aside
No question.
setting aside custodial, which is another amount
Sorry.
of money, but I think we're talking,
I would
80 on
just suggest,
350.
since, I mean, we can give you direction on some of it, I would just suggest we go back and look, because if we're not gonna have the cushion of salary the way we had this year, even though this year we had it and it was unanticipated, as of this moment, we're not anticipating anything. So where else can we have a little bit of a cushion? And I'm not saying we shouldn't give money back to the town as part of that 192,000 that was added to our budget, but I would just go back and say, is there a little bit more
that we could use.
that you could use?
Well, I have to add that in prior years, we've pre-purchased as much as $150,000 in school supplies. And we don't have supply rooms and supply closets that are full right now.
Right.
I think that we go through it, and I don't necessarily think it's wastefully used. I think that it's
Oh,
needed.
I don't think that there's anything that we buy that is not used. In fact,
Absolutely.
none of what we are talking about here are new programs or experimental materials or things that will not eventually be bought and used by students for existing programs.
I would, just to counter the concern about the amount of cushion we're building, the 280 that we're prepaying in sped is actually much larger than
It's
the
more than the last
it's
couple of
$100,000 more than we spent in the last couple cycles. And so when you prepay sped tuition, it just creates cushion. It doesn't preclude you from spending in other areas. Prepaids just create.
Yeah, I mean, but in FY15, we prepaid 290.
I think too, we're not finished and we've not had a full leadership meeting talking about where we are as far as still prepaying and meeting. So I think that John will have a better number
Yeah.
the next time we meet.
Mhm.
Or were there some
I
things
think
on?
he just needs guidance.
I think there are
today.
some things, I think we need to take care of the transportation piece now, because you need to know that you've got the money where it needs to be, so
Right.
that it's,
And you need to do that journal entry.
Right, and I have no problem telling the town we're gonna put 25,000 into the reserve fund, the sped reserve fund. I think that's good. Wasn't there something that was deferred or re-engineered that Lisa wanted to do? What program for next year?
She wanted Words Their Way, but she's not finished doing her study of literacy. So that was one that she was going to pilot in her own
Okay.
room. We can look at that. Like I said, we've not had a full room discussion, but we certainly can look at some of the textbooks for some of the programs that Mrs. Connolly had mentioned. We're going to go next year and take a look again. This, I think, for John was preliminary. It's not a definite. I
Yeah.
think that he was just looking for guidance on particularly transportation and some of the prepaid that he
Yeah.
suggested.
So I'm looking for your acquiescence when it comes to transportation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that is a little unusual.
Yep.
And as for the rest of me, frankly, I'm looking for guidance, we're looking for guidance as to what that level of reversion you wanna see go to the town and we can work backwards from that number. You know, we have the rest of this week and next week to make that happen.
I'll go on the record of saying that I do wanna see a return to the town, of some money. I'm very cognizant of the fact that we borrowed $192,000, so I don't want to diminish that. I hear Ellen's point that perhaps we can push in some areas. If we turn around and spend that general stabilization money to prepay supply, for me, it's tough, in terms
I'm not
of-
saying not give money back to
Oh,
the town, Katie,
right.
I just wanna make sure that in the teaching supplies, textbooks, and custodial equipment line, that there's a comfort level that enough has been prepaid and used. That's it. So if it turns out of the 118, another 18 is needed and we return 100, I'm fine with that. I just wanna make sure that they've done everything, they've looked at everything they need to look at.
Right, and I'd concur. I absolutely felt that guilt about having to go back and ask for more money just to make things run here. But I also think that we need to keep things running here. And I think that it's important to return some money to the town. But I think that the transportation in particular is a concern, because we're already, what's the term I want? Benefiting by the generosity of the town for helping us with the leases. So anything that we can do to kind of do the weights and balances on all the transportation parts, I think that's important. So at the very least, we should make sure that that's covered. And then we should have Louise go back to the leadership team and review everything that was a need versus a want.
John and I will do is ask the principal to reassess where we sort of said, okay, we can do without this budget because we don't,
Right.
we're going to tighten our belt and see if indeed are we on the right track.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying, to reassess where our prepay is and are we doing it comfortably, yet have that comfort to pay back to the town.
Right, and this
I
shouldn't
think we can do
be,
both of those.
this
Yeah.
shouldn't be looked at as, oh, here's a gift and you can get everything that you wanted
Right.
to before, because that really can't happen.
But that's not what I understand, Ellen.
No,
You're
no,
saying-
no,
you're
no.
saying,
Yeah.
you know,
No.
there were things that you said, okay, we can delay and postpone.
Right.
Can we now hop on and say, okay, I can do this now? So
And it would
I
be
will
good
go
if we
back.
could do a little bit of that now,
Mhm.
because we don't know what next year's going
And
to look like.
some of that has already started on a dialogue. Example in point, I've asked Lisa to look at the number of manipulatives that are needed for Envision, because
Mhm.
they're huge at Osgood, as is the writing program. Handwriting Without Tears is a huge consumable program. So those are things that we want to guarantee that we have and don't fall short. So we've already had that conversation, but we can continue it with the others as well.
And one quick question, and you may have an answer on the top of your head, you may not. Do you know how much words there would be to implement if it's decided that they're going to go with that?
You would know that.
Because you
if
have it
were-
at Deer Hill.
Yeah,
It's about the
initially-
same number of students, kind of.
There's a little bit up front. There's initial, I would say initially about 2,000 per grade level.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's not including any training you might want to.
right, in training, we're probably talking about 8,000.
I was gonna say 8 to 10, okay.
I will talk to Lisa about that. It might be the correct way to pilot, to actually put that in and do it correctly.
Okay.
So that, I think that's what you were talking about, so I
Okay.
will have that conversation.
So, I think we should make a motion to allow John to start the process on the transportation. Is there anything else that,
And to go ahead with the prepaid sped tuition.
prepaid sped tuition, yes. But is there anything else that we should do now, as
And
opposed to in 2 weeks?
25,000 to the town for a reserve fund?
Yeah, I think those were the three.
Okay, so those are the three. So transportation. Prepay sped. and 25,000 to the town.
This Fed Reserve Fund.
Effectively, that will just come out of the free cash flow that we,
Out of the reversion to the town.
out of the reversion to the town, but
Right.
we're calling out now that we'd like to,
Right.
take 25,000 of that.
Okay, so could I have a motion to give John the authority to allocate $60,000 to the transportation revolving account, to prepay sped tuitions for next year, and to allocate $25,000 to the town's sped reserve fund.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, roll call, please.
Hi, Barbara Steffen.
Aye, Katie Dugan?
Aye, Gina Stino.
Hi, Ellen Mar.
Hi, Jen Madden.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And talking about buses and transportation, that's the next item. Just a couple of things about the buses. Starting next week, we will be sending the buses up to New England Transit, people we purchased them from, for a thorough inspection, preventive maintenance, fix a few things on the buses. It will cost between $300 and $600 a bus. For them to do it, they will change all the fluids, grease all the fittings, replace all the filters, and again, conduct a thorough safety inspection. So that'll start next week.
That's great.
And by the end of the summer, all of them will have been looked at. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, if you will, just because it's a little unique, it is, let's see, towards the very back, if you, bottom of the page, it says bus maintenance, and the bus number is 90738. And that is where we actually, it's down the very bottom of the page, with the repair that took place on the 10th of May.
I wonder what that was.
Yeah, it is a little unique, and that was, you may remember, we had to call it a low-speed accident is to exaggerate it,
Yeah.
the bus
Yeah.
was stopped. And unfortunately, somebody rolled into the side of it and dented the panel. There was an insurance claim, it was $2,397, it was repaired, but it shows up as no cost in this log because we paid for insurance.
I can't figure out what page it's on.
It's,
So if we count backwards from the very last page, it's 1, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages in from the back. And if you look above that 6th page on May the 10th, you'll see South Shore Auto Body.
Oh, okay,
So there you go.
thank you.
I didn't want anybody to actually come across that at night and not be able to sleep. I was wondering what was going on. Why does it say $2,000 and $0?
And why does it say that we returned a bus? Why-
That's right.
If you read it fast.
You read it fast. So, there you go. And finally, just because it's there, there's, as you can see, the food service van, it really doesn't get a lot of mileage on it. There's a reason why it lasts as long as it does.
I love this, though. Thank you.
I don't think we'll do anything to it until January, when it will go in for safety inspection and some preventive maintenance at that point.
In about 15 years, you'll be liking this one page.
Well, in about 15 years, somebody will, but it won't be me. But somebody will be looking at the page, and maybe we will have filled it up.
Right, and as I said, if we're gonna have a vehicle, we
Sure.
need to track it, so.
Well, and
It sounds a little silly, but,
it's the only way you're gonna know if actually anything has happened to the vehicle.
right,
Either through an accident, mechanical failure that would be covered by warranty,
Right.
something like that.
Are the Dodge Sped bus and the Sped van, are they out to auction yet?
Not yet. That has rolled into a summer project.
Okay.
do you remember what time of year we got rid of the other ones? We got rid of. The buses that went to like Costa Rica or Nicaragua
No, that was the concern.
or something.
Actually, that's probably where they wound up.
No, they did, because somebody that
Someone was on a trip and they
somebody was
saw
on a
it.
trip and saw one of our
Saw
buses.
one.
Helene
That's
Lee,
it,
really.
Helene Lee was, yes.
I used to.
No, we're
So
serious.
this is a long time.
Oh my gosh.
In a previous life, I dealt with with one of the bus companies that does school bus transportation. And that's where, most of their used buses went.
Good buses go to die.
The
They
rainforest.
public transport buses, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I would think that we should have the lettering taken off before they go
I know,
away.
right?
Good thought.
Spray paint. A can of spray paint. Hire a couple of kids and have them go at it.
And John, forgive me if
You
you've
probably
answered
can't read
this,
it, it's
but I
okay.
couldn't find it in my notes where we are with the bus lease extension.
I have requested that they send me a new lease for the
Okay.
last send me a 6-month lease
Okay.
that would cover the last 6 months. Paul Zink is the person I talked to after,
Okay.
just, I don't have my book in front of me. But
So
they're
in-
working on sending us the same form of lease. They provided it the last time. We did not. And so what I've asked them to do is produce a lease with no other changes in terms and conditions,
Okay, just changing the dates.
but changing the dates.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not an
Okay.
extension, it's a new lease.
Do it as a new lease.
Okay.
And do you think we need to have somebody review that? Because there was some concern by capital budget that the leases weren't properly vetted the last time.
I
Or they were
think,
just concerned about.
I think that she was concerned that when we were asking quote unquote for an extension, that there would be additional terms added
Oh, okay.
into it.
All right.
Last time actually Dave did work with Susan Franklin when the leases were.
At the
Yeah.
end, at the end.
At the end, when the
Yeah.
leases were being put together, so I think it's more just when we do get that form.
Is compare them side by each and see if
Yeah.
in fact they carried forward the terms
Right.
and have only changed the dates.
Okay, great. Very
Susan, just given her background in leasing, is always suspicious that there's gonna be something snuck in, and so I think she
Mhm.
just wants assurances that if it's the same terms, then we're good.
Since last time, apparently it was quite a process in coming to meeting of the minds, as they say. I don't think we wanna repeat that again.
No.
And if it was acceptable last time, hopefully, one would assume it would be acceptable going forward, at least on the 6-month extension.
And I think at the time, the school and the capital budget committee were less used to leasing as a mechanism. I think there's a level of comfort now that we have a number of leases as it relates to our IT equipment, and similarly on our buses, that we've accepted the form once, we should be comfortable with it a second time.
Mhm.
Very good.
Very good,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Any
So-
questions?
Nobody has any questions further? No. Okay, next is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. We have two of the handbooks and the improvement plans tonight. Lisa will be presenting hers for Osgood later in July. And I do want to add one thing to both the to the Deer Hill parent-student handbook or the student handbook. And that is going to come in on a district. We have what Sue has so well produced, an acceptance or user policy for digital learning. So that will come later, but I can explain that at that point if I could. It will appear both in the district and in the individual schools.
It's one of these
Yes, that's
pretty
the one.
ones. Okay.
That is the Osgood, and there is a
Oh.
Deer, yes.
I didn't see that.
So those will reappear.
Great.
So
So
there'll
that
be a
you know.
general one for the district and then
There is one,
tailored ones
correct,
to each?
right.
Okay.
Yes, one that is more language appropriate for the age group.
Great.
So if Jennifer would take the hot seat. Or the cool
That's
seat.
fighting.
Yeah, I know it. I do want to preface that there's been a great deal of work done on the handbook, so
And it
I hope you're
shows.
pleased.
Can I make a general comment?
Please do. You
Louise?
can move that around.
I just noticed in looking at the high school, the middle school, the Deer Hill, and the district, we have 3 different names.
Yes, I did notice that, and I am going to address that at some point.
Okay,
I did notice when I looked at this, it's a student handbook, it should be parent-student handbook.
Okay, and then the middle high school, we call it student parent handbook.
It will be uniform.
Okay.
So, I know everyone's had the opportunity to read them, and, no need for me to go over things page by page, I'm pretty sure. So, for the handbook, first of all, I'd like to really thank, Mrs. Demas and, Mrs. Keeper and anybody else who had anything to do with the district handbook, which, has really served to streamline, in my opinion, what the three principals are asked to do. So it just made total sense, and this year, putting together the handbook was, it was a breeze to be able to do, because so much of the district-wide policies and practices, that I had been trying to sometimes chase down, but, I mean, not that they were hidden, but, just things get updated all the time.
Right.
To make sure they were included in my handbook was taken out of my hands and into the district handbook, so thank you for that, because it made my
Actually,
job a lot easier.
You're being very modest because it was a total collaborative effort. This was leadership meeting and then some, and Mrs. Connolly did a great deal of work.
Sorry.
Lisa did some of the work, as did Dr. DeKeer, so.
I just remember,
I'd love to take the
I
credit.
remember nodding my head and saying, sure, that sounds fine, but somebody did the typing.
And Carolyn saying, I'll take it on.
Thank you, Mrs.
And Jennifer saying, I can format it, so it was very collaborative.
It was a good thing, let me just put it out.
And this is much more accessible as a parent
Yeah.
than, I mean, I kind of look at them as, should I need to go here, I
Yeah.
will, but, if you're asking me on a September night,
Yeah.
I can digest something like this.
Yeah.
I did have one question for you on the
Uh-huh.
Deer Hill handbook. On page 14, there's a reference to homework helper.
Yes.
And honestly, I've seen this model in 5th grade, but I haven't seen any other grade actually do the homework helper. So I didn't know if that was something that you were planning on standardizing, or what your thought was around that.
Yes, I can say yes. The way it's presented makes it sound like it's a standard practice.
Yep.
I understand. And it's just a really good idea that exists in not all classrooms, but many of them. So, if you'll notice in our school improvement plan that the staff is to look at homework practices as a faculty, so that'll be a big part of it.
I personally think the homework helper buddy is a fantastic idea. I know in 5th grade, it was very formal in Meg's class, like literally if you were out, there was a folder and, your buddy their job was to stick the worksheets in it
Yeah.
as, so it was there when you came back or when you wanted to pick it up. Even in 4th grade, when they've got their journals, having a homework buddy that if you forget something, that you can go to so-and-so and find out, oops, I forgot to write down in my journal. I think it's a great practice, so to the extent that it becomes more formal and consistent across all the grade levels, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. I think Google Classroom has helped an awful lot with students being able to independently access their homework assignments too. But that doesn't just take away the need for a real live human being to talk on the phone. Bringing
Or
your
pick up the worksheet. I mean, a lot of times it's tracking down the worksheets.
stuff.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions. You have a placeholder for a map of the building. Are we gonna have a map of the building in all?
We've had that discussion before.
Yeah.
The issue
But
with,
it's safety.
with-
Mine has a map.
Right, and the maps should be deleted because they become a safety hazard,
Right.
it was a safety recommendation
Right.
that those do not appear.
Okay, so your placeholder for your map page will go away. I
Out it
guess.
goes.
Out it goes.
It was
Table of
discussed
contents
with the
will be changed.
safety and security.
Right,
That
right.
having that map with room numbers, et cetera, is giving information that really should not be widely dispersed.
Right, I noticed on, let's see, I have a note on page 11. Oh, there's 2 references in email and phone calls for the staff directory in the front of the book, maybe if you just put the page number, maybe that's too picky, I don't know. Because you have your staff directory, which is great, on pages 4 and 5.
So you're saying having a reference there as.
To where the what pages they
Providing
can
the
refer
staff
to.
directory on page 4 and 5 of the handbook, that's all I would
So
do.
it should be parentheses.
Or how about even a hyperlink to the staff directory on the website?
On page 12, under Classic Education Foundation, I think the thought that is incomplete. If you look at the last line, Osgood School, semicolon, a special
yes.
something.
Good catch.
That is a good catch, thank you.
What page is that, I'm sorry?
Page 12,
12.
under CEF.
There's a
Then-
leftover sentence from a former
Yeah,
document.
then on page 14, under lunch program, and I couldn't find the notes, I thought when we had the audit of the lunch program that it was determined as a district that some of our prices were
to change.
and we were gonna do them in 2 phases. There was gonna be this year and then next year.
Correct.
But was the second year at Osgood and not at Deer Hill? A
Second year
change?
was at Osgood,
Yeah, I
not at
think
Deer
so.
Hill.
Yes.
Not at Deer Hill,
correct,
yeah.
okay, I couldn't remember.
Deer Hill was in line, Osgood was not.
Mhm.
So, and we're gonna do Osgood in 2 years,
Right.
okay,
Next year, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
yeah.
it goes up by another 25 cents.
25 cents.
I'm sorry, I have one more note. If I can't find it, I don't have it. Oh, the middle high school puts in an evacuation plan. And I don't know if that would be appropriate for the elementary levels.
In terms of where the converging spot is and stuff like that?
Well, no, it's a more generic, evacuation plan. Evacuation of the building, their times, you know, it's 3 bullet points in a paragraph. It doesn't say exactly where to go. It says, leave the classroom quickly but quietly, follow the posted evacuation route to leave the building by the nearest exit, remain with the teacher in class that students are currently assigned to.
I think that it's more of an employee evacuation at the elementary school
Okay.
because teachers leave them out.
Leave them out.
Right.
Okay,
So I think it's a very different process.
yep.
I also think that, I just noticed when you were talking about hyperlinks, I will see that we put a hyperlink under allergies to the allergy procedure manual.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And lastly, it looks like we eliminated the section on student conduct on buses. Is that because it's a generic district?
Yes. It is in the it is in the parent
Policy.
student district handbook.
Okay.
I think that's why we needed it, isn't it? It is.
Is that the one, and so for all the policies at the end of this one, there's the signature page goes, that, is that, I mean, do you send home, I can't remember, it's, a signature page goes home where you have to sign that you've read the policies? Is that what happens?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that, okay. So if a lot of the policies are in the district one, is that's
It's
what that
gonna
page
be
would go with?
this that goes home, so it's gonna be, the cover is gonna be Deer Hill
With district.
with
With the
district
district.
behind it.
It really should be electronic,
Yeah, it should
Right.
be.
right, with copies available for those who do not have it. I don't think it would be paper-wise to send it in hard copy.
But we do collect, I mean, there's at least for Deer Hill, there's a 1-pager where I sign off on photos, that I've read the handbook,
Correct.
which is now a 2-part thing. So I guess that sheet will still come home to me, hard copy, you guys will collect that?
Yes, unless someone tells me to supplant it with the district one.
We'll discuss that. I think that we could probably do the signature electronically as well, so it needs to be a discussion.
Yeah.
Cause there's a bunch that, like the bus policy indicates that you need to have read the bus policy and understands the rules for the bus. I just can't remember if that one comes home.
I think we can do that aligned as a district and see how we do that. And I think you're doing it electronically. correct, at the middle high school? The signatures electronic?
I believe we use the same
Yeah, we
form
use
that,
it.
I can't see the form that Dr. Rivera has, but I think it's the same
We'll
form.
make it uniform, but I'll
Yeah.
present
We-
it to you.
yeah.
That's
Same form.
We did,
Well,
yeah.
good, last year's Jar Hill handbook, there was a section on media release.
Mhm.
And it's not in this one, so I think it is important somewhere, and I didn't notice it in the district section.
It's kind of like the media release, it's permission for use of student photograph, likeness, and or voice.
Mhm.
So I think it's just intended to be more broad, because it would include perhaps, you know, films that students make with our videography equipment
Right.
that they wanna, you know, post on their classroom website or
Right.
something.
And that's really it for me.
So for the school improvement plan, tried to keep it simple, 3 worthwhile goals, that were consistent with the district's strategic plan. The first one, to promote the social and emotional well-being of students, to really continue the work that we began last summer. We had a nice leadership group that met in the summer, studied up on the components of social emotional learning as it's framed by the organization CASEL, which is, I think, the national
Standard.
recognized go-to organization. So what those teachers did last summer was they examined the 5 components. So social awareness, relationship skills, self-monitoring, self-awareness, and responsible decision-making. And purposefully connected those skill sets with our existing curriculum. And integrated some either literature connections or activities or something that promoted the learning of that skill within our existing curriculum, either in literature or in social studies, science. I mean, the possibilities abound. And then they went before the faculty on the first day at our first faculty meeting and showed how their decision-making had gone, how their thought process had gone, and how those lessons were integrated into the curriculum. And so what we need to do now is just continue to make that a focus of our curriculum writing. It's the goal to have all of our curriculum on our Google Docs by the end of next year. There is a very comprehensive template that we're using for units, for the sequence, for the pacing, but also for the essential questions, the suggested interventions from our tier 2 and tier 3, that's special ed personnel, technological resources, that kind of thing, that makes each unit really rounded out. So a part of each unit is, how are you going to address promoting social emotional learning for kids? So we're interested in doing that. We are interested in assessing the students' social emotional learning as they see it from their perspective in grades 3 and 4. We don't need to do it in grade 5 because the DESE did it for us this year. There was a social emotional learning or school climate survey that was administered to all grade 5 students as part of their MCAS. So they will do us the favor of aggregating those results, and so that will be, when I looked at the instrument that they had our students use, it was very similar to the one that we were thinking of using school-wide. So that will be really good.
And do you think they'll continue that practice of including that as part of the 5th grade?
I bet they will.
Okay.
It seems like social emotional learning is an idea it had never really went away, although it's been called something different as long as I've been in education. But people are now realizing in the field of education that it's an essential piece of academic achievement. It used to be like an either or. Well, we're a school that focuses on school climate and making everybody feel comfortable. Well, we're a school that focuses on academic achievement, as if the two, were mutually exclusive. And what we're finding now, and any 3rd grade teacher could have told you 20 years ago, that academic achievement really is dependent on the social emotional learning and the school climate, and whether or not kids feel comfortable to take risks. So, that's why I believe the DESC is going to stick with this. Boston Public Schools has somebody in their assistant superintendent position, so it's a pretty big role. He's the assistant superintendent for social emotional learning. That's what he does.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it's really an idea that is here to stay. So we talked about the integration, creating a school-wide calendar. We're interested, again, in as a school community building, to really focus on one of the 7 strengths. Now, this is interesting because in the past, we've played with pieces of character education and focusing on a piece of character education every month. This is, this month we're gonna talk about honesty, yay, that kind of thing. But recently we came across a different kind of framework to celebrate in schools, and it's called the 7 Strengths. It's originally from a literature series. So I just lifted it from a literature series that Scholastic was coming up with. But we talked about it, we thought how fabulous to celebrate not just character traits, but bigger themes like belonging, curiosity, having a whole month to celebrate friendship, to celebrate kindness, to celebrate confidence. These are some ideas, some of the themes that we can really sink our teeth into. And we're very hopeful that focus on these states of being, these joyful states of being, will be really nice for our school. There's tons of literature that goes along with it, but there's all kinds of other things that you can do too.
So this replaces kind of the character train idea that you had. It'll be now 7 strengths.
Right. And to utilize our monthly faculty meetings for that kind of thing. So that's the first goal, that's the SEL goal. The second goal, also to ensure that all students are able to achieve their potential. That's directly from the strategic plan. To continue working on our curriculum documentation. The Google Classroom and are being so well outfitted with the Google technology has just really been exactly the ticket that our teachers at Deer Hill School needed. It is such a fabulous tool for collaboration, and they really take into it. We want to continue to promote creativity. I think we do a pretty good job at the foundational skills, but it's really those 21st century skills of creativity and innovation that we really, really need to continue to put in the forefront of our planning. That also came up in our parents' survey in the spring, that most parents thought we were doing a great job of the foundational skills, and even with communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. It was the creativity and innovation piece that was kind of lagging behind the other skills. So we want to take a look at that. The new initiative for project-based learning is very helpful in that regard. So we will continue in our training and in our unit writing in that. We want to create a systematic and a school-wide vehicle for meeting the needs of high achievers, and this has been something that I've been looking at in the parent survey for years. Again, our parents think we do an excellent job with, by and large, with our students with disabilities and with our students with challenges. The idea that, we have tiered instruction and we have a lot of different kinds of practices aimed at helping kids who are having difficulty seems to really be a message that's strongly out there. What the parents are not so confident about is that there is a concerted effort towards pushing kids who are high achievers towards achieving their best potential. So either we're not doing it very well or we're not talking about it very much. And so I want to take a look. I don't really know. The teachers, when I observe them formally and informally, have to me seem like they have made arrangements for kids who learn things quickly to not be sitting there waiting around while other kids take longer to learn the same thing. But perhaps it's just not as widespread, school-wide, as we need it to be, or encoded in some kind of practice that teachers know how to talk about.
Well, I think when I read this, to me, the piece that really jumped out was the systematic school-wide, because my observation is that, like you said, it happens, but it is different in practice, teacher to teacher. So as a parent, you know, as you go through the grades, it doesn't feel like the same thing. You may experience it one way in third grade, a different way in fourth grade. So I think, to me, the systematic piece was really the key piece, so that as you're trying to get recognition or understanding from parents, you have to show it to me a couple times the same way for it to click.
Right, and our teachers should develop a shared language around it too. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that it's, you know, it's going to overlap with our initiative with project-based learning, and with this concept that part of our shared language now has been learning experiences that are low threshold and high ceiling. In other words, those kinds of learning experiences that all kids can access, but there's enough room for extension of critical thinking activities and learning deeper and further exploration that will allow a student who is a high achiever to be doing, all the students to be doing the same thing, but just to different degrees. So you don't have your differentiation of instruction. When I was first starting out as a teacher, was burdensome for teachers, because it meant in those days basically coming up with 3 different lessons for 3 different groups of kids, and that's hard to sustain. But with our practices of universal design learning and our project-based learning, and this notion of learning experiences, activities, projects that are low threshold but high ceiling, I think we can do a better job by our high achievers. And again, to examine our homework practices. We are reading a lot about flipped classroom, where students are doing much of their research at home, on the internet that's been assigned, and then coming in and applying what they learned at home. So that is exactly different and flipped from what, you know, us old school folks are used to doing. You teach the kids in class, and then they go home and they apply what they've learned. So we want to look at that. We want to make sure that the time that the kids are spending on their homework is not, drudgery. Not something, why do 100 math problems if you've proven that you can do 5 perfectly? That kind of thing. We really want to examine it. The teachers have made leaps and bounds, I believe, in most areas, in terms of communicating a parity of expectations across the grade level. But we can make it better. And we're very respectful of the kids' time at home and the parents' time with them. So that's goal number 2. And the last one is to implement the district-wide technology strategic plan with a focus on building level goals. So at our building, we've had a marvelous time this year with our devices. The Chromebooks and the iPads, they're in use constantly. The kids and the teachers have done amazing work with them. So I couldn't be more thrilled with what I've seen in terms of technology this year with the devices. But we want, we don't want to rest on our laurels. We got 2 3D printers through a grant through the CEF this year. So we really want to spend time learning how to use them. We want to work with the IT department on what they are referring to as the device management systems usage and policy. So the degree to which a teacher can manage and have control over what the kids are doing on those devices is we want to take a good look at. We want to really elevate the quality of the kids' internet searches, make sure that teachers know how to teach them how to evaluate and efficiently go to high-quality sites that are grade appropriate. We want to create a makerspace for our 3D printing projects. And we need to infuse internet research student training and responsibilities. So that would be very much related to the document that you saw about the digital learning. So that needs to be infused, not just in our computer class, which is where it lives now, but across the curriculum.
Was there any discussion And it came up at the BYOD parent meeting around typing, and I don't know. Keyboarding, yeah. So it came up at the BYOD as a comment that there was a rising sixth grade parent who felt like the keyboarding skills were still not quite there, and if we were taking the leap in middle school to beginning to take notes,
Yeah.
has there been any, is that maybe not, doesn't rise to the level of a school improvement plan, but I did wanna raise it.
Well, yes, that did come back to me, and I did try to address it in my next newsletter that went home. We use Ultra Keys. We have been using Ultra Keys as part of our computer specialist class every week. That takes up the first 10 or 15 minutes of every computer class, and it's just as you would imagine, in kind of a game format. It's kind of drill and skill strengthening, and the kids progress at their own rate and keep track of however many words per minute. They're improving by every week. Different kids pay more attention to that and try harder than others. So at the end of 3 years, I could see where different kids might be at different levels. I personally, when I see the kids in the Chromebooks, am very impressed by their efficiency in their typing. So, but again, all kids are different. The computer teacher and I sent home some recommendations for kids to use at home, some game formats, so that they could continue to practice. Just like any musical instrument, it's not gonna be learned in the short amount of time that you have your once a week lesson. Good typing has to come through muscle memory and practice. There's just no way around it. So I personally would not recommend giving up more than 15 minutes of our computer class time to keyboarding skills, because there's so much more that we need to do that really needs to engage the kids in their critical thinking, that kind of thing that they cannot practice at home without a teacher being there. So, that's might not be the answer that some parents want to hear.
No, I think the summer, I think the summer homework of, if you're worried about your keyboarding skills, for your student, have them spend, 10 minutes, practicing here or there. I think that's helpful.
I mean, to really have the school be accountable for kids typing at 40 words a minute by the end of 5th grade, I think, or 60 words a minute, whatever. I think that would take too much time away from the instruction.
I would caution you as we look at MCAS becoming more and more of a keyboarding exercise that, it didn't come up this year, at least in my 4th grade world, about worrying about keyboarding, but I will tell you that my sister, 2 years ago, when they were starting Park in New Jersey, it became the hot button issue around, are the 3rd graders, do they have the keyboarding skills? I think it's something we need to keep an eye on, only, maybe not for 4th or 5th, but if keyboarding ever becomes an issue with 3rd grade MCAS, you're gonna get a lot of feedback around my students not ready to.
One of the things, the 3rd grade, I'm glad you said that, it's a legitimate concern. The constant use of the Chromebooks, I think, has really helped the kids quite a bit in their keyboarding skills this year. But the 3rd grade, as you know, they have iPads, because the applications for iPads, that was a legitimate decision making that I know many people here were part of. The iPad applications are so very appropriate for 3rd grade. It's a good technological tool for them, but it doesn't give them practice with the Chromebooks. And that's what the MCAS will be on now. Next year, I understand 3rd grade will not be typing their MCAS, but the day will come. So
Maybe they can have a tournament of those Deer Hill kids like tournaments, don't they?
they're
Instead of dodgeball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do know that it became a huge district-wide kerfluffle over Park and keyboarding for 3rd graders. So I just.
The other thing I would tell you is Cassie O'Brien is looking at Writing Without Tears, has a keyboarding component that's called Keyboarding Without Tears, that,
Oh, I like.
That's
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And the beauty, I think, of that piece is that instead of just practice, it infuses it into the curriculum.
Yeah.
So that the kids learn how to use their keyboarding skills to do something in ELA or in their science or social studies.
Yeah.
So it has a nice blend of learning keyboarding and making it a reason to learn it, to make it functional.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at that as something as we move forward. I'd say when I watched the fourth graders and during MCAS,
There were.
they were fine. They really did a wonderful
Yeah.
job. The eighth grade as well, and that was a concern.
Yeah, definitely.
How was that all gonna play out? And the kids did quite well
Yeah.
as we watched them, take this test this year, so.
I do think it's that third grade where they haven't had the
Yep.
exposure. I did have one question, Jennifer, just looking back at last year's plan, under goal number 2, there were 2 things that you had in there that I just wanted to close out on. I actually think it would be a helpful practice, perhaps going forward, for you guys to close out last year with us before we jump into this year. I did the comparison, and for me, it felt like you had closed out a lot of the stuff, but there were 2 that I didn't know the status on. One was, the science curriculum. So your specific goal was to provide opportunities for teachers to research and revise the science curriculum according to the new science standards.
Yes.
Is that one that you feel like is closed out and didn't need to be carried forward?
We did carve out, yes, time in particular for teachers to examine the new science curriculum. So, yes, I'm not planning on using any other early release days or half professional days or something for that purpose.
Okay, so that's closed out. And then the other one, that you had mentioned, and again, that goal 2 was, forming a PLC to research and encode and integrate essential concepts of global citizenship, related to 21st century, in ELA and social studies. And again, it sounded like that was tied a little bit to project-based learning, but, the global citizenship concept, is
Yes.
that
Yeah, we
closed
had
out?
a lead group of teachers who
Yeah.
did that, and at the same time that the SEL folks who were integrating SEL components into the curriculum, they, at the next faculty meeting, showed how they were able to do that and continue to do that work. So as teachers continue to write the curriculum, that's also another column.
Yeah.
Another question, how are we going to relate this to issues of global citizenship? So it's just, there weren't, like SEL was like a goal in and of itself with all
Yeah.
those other components, so that's why it kind of looks like it's not a thing anymore, but it remains a thing.
Well, I guess what I like about the new format is it kind of just focuses on what are your action steps for next year. Some of this stuff, like PBIS or global citizenship, are now kind of standard operating practices
Right.
for you.
Right.
And I'm sure you continue to.
If I feel it's gained traction so that I don't need to keep it in the forefront, as, something to really, really carve out time for training,
Yeah.
carve out faculty meeting time for that kind of thing, then, yeah.
It kind of falls to the.
Otherwise, the school improvement plan would be
Exactly.
100 pages long.
Well, and in the past, it was a
Yes.
combination of standard operating practices and
Yeah.
kind of new initiatives. Okay, that's great, thank you.
I just have one other comment that's not necessarily specific to the Deer Hill plan, but I was just noticing sort of in a lot of the improvement plans and literature that goes out, when UDL is brought up, it's tied directly to technology. So it almost looks like UDL is something that happens when you're using technology, as opposed to UDL is something that you do when you are designing your curriculum and thinking about lessons and units and projects and everything. So it was just sort of a general thing. I think if I was a parent and didn't know what UDL was, I'd maybe think it had something to do with a device, as opposed to being a way to think about your curriculum reaching all students from, and it's not only, and also just thinking of UDL, I think it wasn't used in terms of, in this plan in terms of reaching high achievers, but UDL applies to high achievers. I mean, that's the whole point, is to reach a broad spectrum and think of it that way. So it was just something I kept noticing repeatedly in a lot of the literature that's going out.
You mean the district literature, yes. And the reason for that
And I know
is-
it's an emphasis, it's
Right.
use this is a great way to achieve this, but I felt like it was almost starting to become
Coupled.
yes.
It
That's
appears
all.
that way because when the committee for technology convened, the
Mhm.
larger committee of the second year, UDL became part of that. that technology is our roadway to facilitating universal design for learning.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's where the subject came in, and if you look at our strategic plan, it sits on the platform with the technology integration in the platform. And I
Yeah.
can understand how that would be confusing.
Yeah.
I also wanna say that district-wide, we have work to do as far as universal design for learning and
Right.
its implementation, so
Yes.
it's still in its infancy as far as I'm concerned.
I think
So,
maybe
I
because
understand.
when I was hearing about UDL, it wasn't in the context of the technology plan. I think it was probably having to do with CPAC, so I didn't link it with technology. I linked it to students who you were trying to reach in a different way. So I never had that linkage in the background from the technology. I came at it from a different
I
angle.
think we have a substantial amount of work to do in that
But,
area.
yeah, I mean, I just always think of it like, if you're a super awesome teacher, like, you've got UDL figured out and you apply it, but it's not, I don't think it's easy. At any
Right.
rate. Okay, that was just my general comment for the evening about
Thank you, Jen. I do have last year's plans electronically that Katie sent me, and, well, I'm not gonna send it to you. I was gonna send it to you, I don't see your computers.
Last year's
one?
Last year's improvement plans, if you
Oh,
wanted to.
the
refer
program.
to
I
that,
have-
do you
I
have
have
it?
it.
Yes.
This is just one update, that was Mrs. Madden's suggestion.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Kim.
To start with the handbooks, since
They're the most fun.
there are no, I've got my digital version of one and my hard copy of the other. So there are a couple of things that have to be cleaned up in terms of the language, as Ellen pointed out, making sure everything is consistent. I noticed that one of the handbooks doesn't have the currently updated reading, which has a different vibe to it. Things like that the final copy didn't import all of the changes. But the biggest work that we did on the handbooks this year was redacting all of the things that were going to the district and looking for places to make sure there wasn't still going to be an overlap or inconsistency. And then re-indexing and trying to make everything else. So quite literally, the only purposeful change that I made was after having a focus group with students, taking out gum chewing out of the high school handbook as an offense. Because they found it insulting and I agreed. It just seemed quite silly. So, but it was we had a lot of good conversation around things that are in there and improvements that we could make in terms of clarity of language and such. But that's really the only change, because there was so much happening in terms of the district handbook and everything going there and ours becoming smaller to support it behind. It seemed that nothing else was critical that really needed addressing. Certainly any of our practices in terms of students' discipline or process, tardies, absences, everything in there is perfectly fine. And so we have the goal of meeting again with students, earlier in the year, next year, to say, okay, if we were to streamline language, now that all of the really super official stuff is in this one, how can we maybe make it more family friendly? So, I'm happy to discuss, I'm happy to have things pointed out to me, of course.
Go ahead. I had just a couple comments, and one global thought. So the global thought I had related to BYOD. I was wondering whether it was appropriate in the student parent handbook to actually have a statement about BYOD, just like we have a statement about textbooks, given that BYOD is such a big initiative and that there are standards around making sure that you bring your device, you bring it fully charged.
As part of an expectation
I
for
think
being
it would be
prepared for class
helpful
and such. Mhm.
to add that in. That was my global concept. I had just a couple small observations. One was in both of the handbooks, there was an insert of policy JKAA, which is the physical restraint. So in the middle school handbook, it appears on pages 24 and 25, which I just thought was, it almost looked like it just needed to be deleted, and perhaps it wasn't deleted in the version that we got.
Oh, yes.
And then in the high school ones, it was on page 29 and 30, like that's part of the the district one.
Right, and the restraint, and we talked about this restraint policy that is that, JKAA, and,
I think it was just, I think,
It's not, so it's not in my high
Okay.
school one that I have in front of me, but if it is right, it is redundancy because that absolutely went to the district handbook.
the other thing we did in the
Yeah, it was-
district
it
is
was-
rather than
Which
give.
ours was much longer.
Right, and the
Yes.
entire policy is here, and when I looked at that, it was really not necessary to have all of the great detail when it was well condensed, by Mrs. Buchanan, in our district.
yeah, no, I,
So I think this
I have
needs
the
to be
message, yeah.
deleted.
so
You're-
maybe it was just a typo in the packets that went out to us, cause both of our packets
Packets have
for the middle
Yeah, they
school, high
have.
school,
Interesting. Yeah, it was
had
supposed to be taken out.
JKAA right in the smack dab in the middle of
It
it.
should be taken.
Yeah, I think ours was about 10 or 11 pages in each of the middle and high school handbooks, so the version that went into the district handbook was much more streamlined, and I think probably in the deleting, that page was just overlooked.
Okay,
So we'll make
that's-
sure that gets cleaned up
okay.
for sure. Yep.
The other comment that I had was, in the middle school handbook, if you go to, the discipline section, page 19, on these tables,
Mhm.
you still have all of the asterisks and the references to the specific infractions. And in the high school one, you cleaned it up, so it's just the tables without the asterisks back to the specific
Mm.
infractions. I thought it was easier to read if you just.
We're looking constantly to see what the legend meant.
Exactly, and the legend in the new version is so, it's back on pages 28 and 33, it's so disconnected now
Mm.
that, there's no linkage, and if I really cared about what the class cut policy was, I'd probably dig to find it, but it wasn't helpful to have the asterisks. So I thought that the format that you had in the high school was cleaner, and it probably should be consistent, just to delete all of the references to the specific infractions. And then the other thing, and this is just a global comment about the, on page 46, about the, internet and acceptable use, I just wanna make sure that.
That would be replaced as will Jennifer's with the policy. that
Okay.
is-
There's a one that-
With- yeah.
With
the
the,
new
with
one.
the new ones, okay.
Yep.
As long as we're consistently doing that.
Mhm.
And then the only other comment I had was on the high school one, on page 45. You had, the whole listing of what notice of equal opportunity and notice of non-discrimination was, and if you look in the middle school handbook on page 38, you actually redacted it down to 2 very short paragraphs, so I think you've got a whole, save a whole page. By just using the same format as you had in the middle school, which was a hyperlink, which works well. But otherwise,
But shouldn't that just be in the district handbook then?
Yeah, that's in the district that it was supposed to be pulled out.
Okay.
There was a lot of cross-referencing.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
surprised that we
Yeah.
missed things
You
for
missed
sure.
things, okay.
Very hard.
So that's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're so ahead of the game. Okay, so we're just gonna pull those out and talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
So page 45 of the high school book is unnecessary? Is that what
Yeah, 'cause it
you're
should
saying?
be in
Because
the,
it's in the
Yeah.
district.
it should be in the
So
district.
we'll take
Title
that out.
IX is Mary Buchanan.
And so we'll also pull it out of the school too.
It should, yeah, it should be in the district. I had the comment you did, Carolyn, on the middle school and the date on the administrative reading page, which just easy to fix.
And the same thing with the dates with the ballot
Right here.
schedules, right? They'll be the same next year.
Oh, right,
With the pages
yeah,
that say
they
ballot
pay, yeah,
schedules.
all the
the
things that
transportation.
we're going to do,
Yeah.
right, they
So
need to
that'll
update
just be-
before we have a post.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it'll just get updated.
When we do the faculty directory, we'll make sure that all those things are accurate, once we have the real map.
yeah, and we said no maps.
We took out the maps,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, bus conduct, that's in the
It's in the
district,
district now.
so that's fine. The only comments I had on the, middle school, on the high school, Okay, on page 56. So, this is just more of a question about, because this is like the same language that we've had for quite some time, and it's the same language that's in the athletic handbook online from 2014, 2015 about the leadership council. Does that still exist?
I have different pagination than you.
Oh, so sorry.
The version I have, so what is it that we're
So
looking
it's
at, Ellen?
co-curricular expectations, section 4,
Towards the very
towards the back.
Do you want my copy?
That's just the athletic co-curriculars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it says for active members of co-curricular groups, leadership standards. So it's not really a question for the handbook, it's really just a question in general about the leadership council, if it's still active, viable.
Meaning club presidents and team captains, and
And-
no.
yeah.
It has never existed since I've been here.
I didn't think so.
But there's a captain's leadership, thing that, the training and participation, student ambassador that we do through the MIAA. Again, maybe I spoke too quickly and harshly. The first year that I was here, there was, a captain's focused training that all of the student leaders were brought together into the library to talk about what it meant to be a positive leader and anti-hazing and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
And there was an education piece around it for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Are they a body that is recognized by students? No. No one would ever describe themselves as being on the leadership council. They don't know that terminology.
Okay, the leadership council that I'm aware of began when the captain's policy came into being long before you got here. And it was actually off-season coaches who, if you were an in-season coach, you would have a slate of nominees for your captaincies, for your captain's positions. And that those nominees would then go before the leadership council to be interviewed and vetted to be captain.
So we do that internally with staff. For sure, there is a process for
Okay.
vetting captains, but it doesn't involve other coaches and it doesn't involve students. Because we could never have conversations with students about other students.
Correct.
And why it might or might not be a good fit.
Right.
But so that kind of a process definitely exists. In fact, I recently had a lengthy conversation with students about kind of understanding, and they pointed out that they would like to have that talked about maybe at some of the sports evenings before the season, or have somebody, explain to them that when they vote for a captain, they're not really voting for a captain. They're making their interest known. They're making a recommendation. They're telling their coaches that these people we think would be good student leaders, that their word isn't, they're not making the decision then and there, that it's collective. But as a formal body, there isn't anything like that. And
I don't
I've
think
worked in
so.
districts where the leadership council is made up of captains, captain's council sometimes it's called, but it's
Yeah.
but when it's a leadership council, I've worked places where it's team captains and all club presidents. So they come together as kind of a separate student government organization that isn't student council, so.
Right, no, but how it originated here was it was faculty or coaches or
Interesting.
whatever.
So if
And
that's-
the whole disciplinary process, because it just begs the question, if you go down, the leadership council may invoke consequences regarding the transgression. I mean, essentially, depending upon the transgression, it's the athletic director and the building principal.
And the
Right.
coaches sometimes,
And
I mean,
the
they're
coach,
in the
and the coach
conversation
could
for sure,
get
Yep.
involved, but it's not a council,
Right.
or it's not a committee, it's not, it's, we still have it in our handbooks and in all of our language, but it doesn't really exist anymore.
So the athletic co-curricular piece, is not something that, I always feel as though part of that's MIAA and part of that came in piecemeal, right, so it should be stricken. Yeah.
Or you could make it say something like the appropriate leadership representatives.
I think it's kind of, as I quickly have just been scanning, it's sprinkled throughout this
Throughout
document.
the whole
I mean,
thing,
yeah.
this has
Because
to
that's just, so the
Yeah.
back end of it always feels as though it's just an athletic co-curricular piece and doesn't get the amount of attention that the rest of the book does.
And,
Right.
and it's been here forever, but what I'm saying is this
Needs to
adult
go away.
leadership council, because I don't wanna confuse it with what you're
Yep,
talking about,
yep.
a student group of leaders, and I know there are groups of kids that go to the Gillette, and they go to different conferences, and Ron takes, I understand all that. but this original leadership council for approval of leaders doesn't exist.
No.
Probably shouldn't reference
So it
something that
shouldn't be
doesn't exist.
referenced.
So it
No,
should-
and I don't ever bother to scrutinize that part of the book
Yeah.
because so little changes and so many of the MIAA things are embedded in there.
Right.
The only time that it's come up is when it contradicts something elsewhere in the book that we've yanked it, but we should just revise it so that the relevant pieces are included as a supplement or as another heading of athletic things and, yeah, get rid of all that junk.
Do you think that MIAA has a requirement?
No,
for
I
it?
know they
No,
don't.
no, they
Okay,
don't.
then,
Do not.
then
No.
maybe just change the words.
Well, it speaks to a process that doesn't exist.
Right.
So I really think it's, you know, I think you have to revisit it with Ron and say, okay, well, we've been writing this but we have our own process, whatever our own process is. Because then when you go to the leadership standards, beyond MIAA, we also, as a district, will permanently dismiss a student from a leadership position for an infraction from all leadership positions going forward. So that's not an MIAA thing.
No,
So
that is our standard.
that's our standard, which is fine.
Mhm.
But it's I just think I think it needs to be cleaned up because I do think that parents of athletes get confused about what is the school rule and what is an MIAA rule, thinking they might be one and the same or not. So, and that came up as just a quick segue at the last Safe Harbor meeting I went to. There were 3 parents, they all have student athletes, and they were all very confused about what were Cohasset school rules and what were MIAA sanctioned
Well,
rules.
in the way that we often explain it to people is that, you know, it's kind of, in some cases, we trump theirs. Whichever is the more stringent of the two is the one that's applied. So, you know, Cohasset we have some of our rules are stricter than the MIAA
Yep.
requirement.
Yep.
And some of the MIAA requirement we find to be, you know, very, very strict. So, I mean, it's an odd situation sometimes. Sometimes our hands are just tied and it is what it is, you
Right,
know?
right.
But I agree,
So I think this
Yeah.
needs some
So
clarity.
section 4 needs
Yep.
some help.
Yeah, also, also in section 4, there's again, part of the offense and all of that is students who violate the MIAA, Cohasset Middle High School chemical health policy, may not, at the principal's discretion, be eligible to attend the postseason team banquet breakup celebration. They do not finish the season in good standing. I don't have a problem with that. However, the banquets have evolved to where they're non-school sponsored. So if a athlete doesn't finish a season in good standing, first of all, they're not gonna be invited to the banquet by the coach. So I think that's kind of, makes this move, but they're not events, the kids don't get their letters, they don't get their awards, they don't get anything sponsored by the school, so I don't know if that's a slippery slope for you to be on.
they do get their certificates and sometimes pins and such.
If coaches get the list into Ron with enough time for him to type everything up and get it organized, they do, but I know from personal experience, most of them don't.
Well, my experience, yeah, so I have a different experience.
Yeah.
So I've been to a lot of banquets, so I think that to be honest, I think it's probably leverage and support for the coaches, so that there
Okay.
isn't undue pressure from
Okay.
someone that has recently disgraced the team to be lauded in public, do you know?
Right, right.
I hear what you're saying, there was a time when they felt like school events. And that
They
was
felt like
a
school
long time
events.
ago, yeah.
You know, they were booster sponsored and they felt like school events, and then they became non-school events, to the point where prior to your arrival, administrators were not invited and letters were, you know, I saw John get his first letter, I never saw Stephen get his first letter because it happened at school, so there's been an evolution, and I just think, like I said, I don't have a problem
For the sake of clarity.
for this, but for this, yeah. And then lastly, on the spring sports, I don't know if you need to add girls golf and sailing to the offerings.
I'm sure we do. Sounds like the whole athletic section needs a nice little go-round.
Just, no, not a lot. That's all I have.
Improvement plans.
So my school council has come up with what we think are 3, and now we have 4 goals for the 17-18 year. 2 of ours are, continuations of a little bit slightly different approach to 2 of our goals from last year. So, last year we were looking to explore social emotional learning programs and delivery of services. And this year, our goal is to increase awareness of social emotional learning in curriculum and student supports. So we, as you know, wanted to do some PBIS training with the middle school staff. That happened during the course of this year, that happened last year. A middle school PBIS team existed and did some piloting of the project and some events with faculty and students. And we were looking for external resources to support. So all of that took place during the year, and now we're really ready next year, because we've been able to reallocate that position to have a student transition coordinator to establish the Bright program. So Mrs. Madden happens to, my comment as I distributed those was that Jen got in touch to say, and it was a needed reminder how irritating are the acronyms. She was much nicer about it when you don't know them, when they are rife throughout the plan. So I remember school council saying to me last year, let's put everything in parentheses, and I had neglected that on the first draft. So that's why I gave you a fresh copy. The Bright program is the Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition, and it is the program I've shared a conversation with the committee about before. We are over 50 schools in the state now using this particular model. It is a free resource. They are happy and anxious to come out and work with us, to present to you, to talk about their practices and their success rates. For us, it's perfect because there's a very successful vehicle that now is in its 3rd year in Norwell, and we're able to connect with those folks and talk about stumbling blocks and really hear from them directly how successful the program has been. So that will happen starting in the fall, and we are very excited about the possibility of being able to support students in a variety of social emotional situations, whether it's a return from with a concussion, whether it's with a medical situation. So these students will all be in transition, which will provide a place for them to go, a common point of contact, and someone to communicate with families and teachers. So that's a pretty big leap, and one that you know very well we've been anxious to take. The first bullet of the action step is that we will go ahead and pilot the screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment program, this BIRT program, that at one point we thought was going to be a mandate. You know, obviously, because you invited the rep and senator to come and speak to us during the course of the year, that we've now been told we're probably in very good shape. The state isn't in a position to make it a thing, but we've already all done the training. So we've taken advantage of free training. We know it's a very nice companion piece to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We'll start by piloting the 10th graders, and then we'll figure out for the second half of the year, do we want to also pilot it with the 7th graders, depending on how smooth and how time consuming it really is. But the folks who would be doing the screening have already been to those trainings, so we don't see any reason we wouldn't implement it. We don't find that it would be impinge on any of the other things that we do for kids. We have time and we've figured out a plan already. Now it will just really be about debriefing the process and making sure that it happens and wasn't useful, et cetera.
Carolyn, I do have one
Yeah.
question on that. And Ellen had kind of given us a preview of that this was coming. I guess my question to you is around the original legislation, which we're no longer subject to, had this whole concept of opt-out communication for parents and students. Is that contemplated to be part of
Yes.
something?
A letter will absolutely go home. So there's a model letter that an internal team made up of the nurse and the administrators and the health and wellness people and adjustment counselors have talked about what are our processes and protocols for doing this next year.
Okay.
And so part of it is, of course, notification to families and seeing if they would like to opt out. They certainly can do so. And would that potentially, if a student that we had concerns about, the family happened to opt out, certainly would it mean the student wouldn't be having those conversations anyway? It would just be a different vehicle. You know, if we have a student that's on our radar, so to speak, generally speaking, someone's already in conversation, you know. So our neediest students aren't really what this is designed to catch. It's designed to catch our kids that are very clever at disguising hurts and
Up-and-comers, unfortunately.
and coping struggles that are still managing to perform well academically and appear to the rest of the building as, you know, quite average and quite okay. So the nature of the questions asks them about things they've observed or ways that they're feeling or behaviors they may or may not have engaged in, and the instrument being used is the one that was recommended by the state, on which our people have now been trained. It's like a front and a back, takes just a few minutes to talk to each kid, so we think we have a good plan in place to give it a try.
Have you thought about, like, if a parent says, well, you don't really need to talk to my 10th grader, but I'd love you to have a chat with my 11th grader?
We would hope that the parent would want us to have the chat anyway, right, so there will be a screening, someone's happy to have a conversation. Screenings upon request. And then, of course, you know, with Louise's guidance, we will continue to work with community groups, with Safe Harbor and with other groups to figure out how we can be, as a town and a school community, cohesive in the kinds of things we think are important to bring to students to support them this way. So that's number one. Anyone have
When
any-
do you think the data's gonna come out, the survey data that you did this past spring?
We have the high school survey data already.
Okay.
We have not yet distilled it in a manner that makes us feel we can present it in a way that is allowed it to be reflective and like what are our responses to it. The Louise's Coffee with Barbara Green and others last Friday was one of the results of that, was a concern that we went to Louise and said, you know, we feel like there are behaviors manifesting in students, and we will be able to work, you know, with Brian and Torrin on the high school side and Torrin and Kerry on the middle school side over the summer to figure out what are the pieces we really want to address as a school community, but felt it was important to, and Louise was able to work with Dr. Green on hopefully connecting with parents about keeping an eye on kids and strategies for keeping them safe throughout the summer, you know, because we have not yet had an opportunity to just push out the information, but obviously we would come and do that here first.
Okay.
We also wanted to make sure that we had a basis of support before putting it out. Because if, not that there's, you know, looking it over in some form, doesn't have that necessity, but just that putting a survey out with results of any kind without saying we have a possible support for you didn't seem logical. So that's why I wanted to have a conversation with Dr. Green and with Safe Harbor, and since we're working on social and emotional well-being district-wide, to say we have something here that will help you go forward, regardless of what the results are.
Mhm.
I didn't want to put out a panic without saying we're holding you up. And hopefully there's no panic, but just in case.
Okay.
So,
And I think this is a build on the last the community care. I think
Yeah.
that parents are more aware than they were even 2 years ago when the community care, the care survey came out. The fact that we're doing it 2 years later, a slightly different version of it. People are becoming aware that this is something we're going to do and report out on.
I think we're just more cognizant of social emotional learning
Yeah.
and social emotional well-being, and we forget the bridge from when they leave us to when they come back. And during the school year, we think of adding an adjustment counselor, which we have, or making sure we have an advisory, or making sure that all children have an adult they can go to while they're with us. But the summer is that abyss where we don't have that support for them. So this was our beginning of saying, okay, we have things in place, now let's take a look at the survey and how does all this work? So it was sort of going to the end and fixing it that way. Does that make sense?
It does. Caroline, I was a little, I know the high school you did comprehensively. The middle school survey, was it 6, 7, 8? It was also surveyed? Okay. And that data is also been collected?
Yes.
Okay.
When do
And
you
that
think
was
we
just
might get,
administered last week, so that's a little bit newer and fresher.
Okay. When do you think you might present that information to us?
I have no objections to conferring with the team and doing it in the summertime.
I would say mid-July.
Behind me, everybody should.
They're back
that-
there.
Which one is totally fine?
Yeah,
Mid-July.
yeah.
Yeah, let's get the
Okay.
town building money to look at.
I have to say that when the first one was released to us, it was astounding, because we were always just fed little bits and pieces of information. So to see that all in one comprehensive document, we all kind of sat here aghast. But I think knowledge is power, and it's helpful to have that
I'm more
information.
prepared for the results.
Exactly, exactly.
But I think you're smart in having a response and having analyzed it, because I felt like we saw the data last time, and then there was this big pause.
Oh my God, what do we do now?
Well, big
There's a
pause
vacuum.
around,
Right.
okay, now we know.
Yeah, we totally backed into it.
Um, And it literally took us a year to kind of formulate having some of those parent, meetings. I mean, I think you guys presented it to us in June, and in February, March were the first kind of parent meetings around the community that cares, was almost 9 months later. So this was much more.
No, this is good.
It just makes sense to say, it goes out with saying, I know what direction I need to go in, and there they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed logical.
Is there a sort of designated faculty for the, bridge, the
Right.
transition classroom?
So the program is designed to run with, in some schools it's a teacher level position, in our school it will be an ESP level position, and that is the way that it's done as a model in Norwell, and very successfully. But the program requires that there's a dedicated practitioner, so there has to be a clinician associated with it, and our 2 adjustment counselors will fill that role.
So has the ESP had any training?
The ESP is well trained, not in the Bright program, but will attend the program, but has a skill set that we think is an excellent match based on all of the interactions that we have seen. And, you know, the person's vested interest in students, student interaction, parent interaction, previous experience in another district, knowledge of our best practices, we think it's a good fit. And I'm not being cagey, we just haven't, you know, Louise hasn't made that official move.
I don't know who that is yet. That's what that means.
I know what it is. Are we good with number 1? Okay. So our second goal is to be responsive to the middle school study group. We met with the steering committee to prioritize goals for next year. We definitely want to take some inroads to improving the middle level students' learning experience. One of the things we'll do next year is have a study group, a really dedicated study group to what it means for have a standards-based reporting for the 6th grade. That was one of the subcommittees this year on grading and reporting, but it didn't include necessarily examination of what other districts are doing as a hybrid model. There was nobody saying, I'm going to pretend that I'm gonna pilot it this year, and if I had to assess students based on these standards, what would it look like at grading time? You know, we're no longer in a position where people are getting out the calculator the night before grades are due. I mean, everything's in iPass, so if this is just another layer of that. So it certainly is something important to the district, and we want to make sure that we give it its due. So I'll get some motivated folk who wanna really sit down and dig deep into that issue, because folks weren't necessarily opposed, they just seemed ambivalent or unsure of what it would look like, or how much work would it entail, and what was the value. So we need to provide them with some research on the value add and why we think it's good practice. So that'll be a study group. We really want to, please.
And one just point on that, because I raised it with Carrie when you were here. I think that obviously internally discussions need to happen, but before any moves or changes are made, there needs to be a lot of communication to parents around this issue, because this one is gonna come like a big surprise if we move in a different direction.
Sure.
And it's just, you know how change goes down in Cohasset. It's
So I see, Katie, my task as doing a lot of research and figuring out if it was to work at the middle school, work collectively with middle school faculty
Yep.
and Carrie to figure out if it was going to work here, what would it look like, and then, then I'm bringing it here.
Yeah.
And then we figure out for real, how does it align with the Deer Hill piece of it? Do we see it as a transition between 5th and 7th? And then once,
And then a whole
these
bunch
folks
of
have figured out
communication.
what it looks like,
Exactly.
I imagine then,
Yeah.
I don't see
a
it
process
as,
for sure.
I don't see it as jumping off the cliff
Yeah.
and into standards-based reporting in grade 6. I see it as an alignment and a report to the grade as a transition. I wouldn't want to delete the grading system, and first of all, I wouldn't do it across the board. I would do math and ELA. I don't think we wanna do it across the board for everything all at once, as they did at Deer Hill and Osgood. when we did standards-based reporting at Osgood Deer Hill, it was, okay, you're done now, we're doing standards-based report card.
Right.
I don't see that happening. I see it as a slow transition into it, so that it would be some sort of standards-based reporting that would also have a grade attached. So it would be a 2 report card for me until teachers are comfortable.
Well, and I guess to me, it's all of this makes sense if it's thematically part of a bigger picture for parents around what are we doing with the middle school. You know, it ties into the conversation about when do you level, why do you level, how do we level, how are we doing reporting. You know, again, if it's tied to a bigger conversation about the middle school, you're gonna get a whole lot more buy-in, you know, especially if you guys as a leadership team and the faculty all believe that this is the right thing to do for our middle schoolers. So, you know, again, there's so much here, and I appreciate you calling out just that piece around standards-based reporting, but there's so much around the middle school study, around positioning this as to what do we want our middle school to be and why we think it's best for students. I think that's the message for me that can't get lost. We have to be on very firm ground around we know what's best for students, and we're willing to explain it ad nauseum as it relates to middle school, and then the other pieces just kind of fall off that. So the main bullet point, every time I stare at this, it's that middle school, it's the first bullet point. It all hangs around the first bullet point of the study group findings and prioritizing goals. I mean, that's the key thing. The rest of it really hangs from that. And I guess my question to you was, how do you and Carrie envision that unfolding next year? Because we got a quick update from Carrie, but my takeaway from that was that there was a lot more work to be done by the steering committee that was going to roll into next year.
So my meetings with the steering committee came with some recommendations, some that each group reported out and gave me some specific recommendations that the group had and what they would like to see happen, and absolutely some of that work is work that needs to continue. So for example, this, we know that it isn't something that we could have just, invented a nice little template for and rolled out in September. It requires some more thought and conversation, and I think an examination of districts that do it in the hybrid model that Louise was just referring to, so that people can decide is there value. It's a philosophical conversation around what is it that we're measuring. Is it mastery of a standard? Is it mastery of a skill that is important to us? I have many opinions about the grading at the middle school, and part of this conversation was around honor roll. And are those kinds of things antiquated? And is it an honor roll if 85% of the kids are on it? Are the grades inflated? I mean, I'm just sort of throwing out a bunch of different things. So there's all sorts of layers to this. Yep. And I think that for people for whom this is an area of interest, that it will be an interesting group that can come back and report out to the superintendent and say, where do we go with this? So this is how we feel the Cohasset Middle School student and teachers. This is our reality. This is what we think would work, and then take it from there. So all of these bullets are the result of recommendations from the steering committee, but some of the committee groups had recommendations that were actionable immediately. So there are their practices, there are things that we do, there are maneuvers, physical maneuvers in the building. It might be a room change. It might be, some of them were simple. And
low hanging fruit, easy stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that, and that certainly doesn't belong in my school improvement plan, because that would be artificial. Since we plan to execute some changes this summer. The things that we knew were bigger projects that will be ongoing. So determining aspects of PBIS that work for us and implementing them. So the PBIS trained team, we also met. Well, five of them met with us and figured out a time this summer to meet on July 19th and talk about aspects of the program and training and all the brainstorming that they had spent the year doing. What things were ready to roll, what parts did we like, what parts could we own, and then we met with Mary's support. We met with a fellow from the May Institute 2 days later who had been their coach during the year and kind of brought him up to date on where we were, and we think that starting small with very concrete, very specific practices and goals, and working with the faculty to educate them on that, we figure out how much of this becomes and is absorbed by our culture, even if we never ever call it PBIS again. you know, it's Cohasset Middle School feels good, or what, you know, whatever it is, whatever is the thing, we're ready to do that.
So is the steering committee done?
The steering committee could be reconvened to follow up on this. There wasn't an intent when it first started that the committee would necessarily remain the committee, though of course we realized the work could not be done in a year. I imagine that we would, as planned and met with them a few weeks ago, tackle some things in the summer. You know, they gave me recommendations, I reflected on them, gave them some feedback 2 weeks later, and made some suggestions about what I thought we could actually execute, what needed to be for next year, what needed to be in the summertime. So I imagine that we would want to pull that group back together around Columbus Day to say, okay, so this is the conversation we had in June, these were kind of promises that we made to one another that we could do, like how are we doing now?
I guess I'm just a little surprised, given that we heard at the beginning of April, really the first update that felt like we were kind of maybe a third, half the way done, and now it sounds like the middle school study is wrapped up, the steering committee is over, recommendations have been made. I guess I'm a little surprised.
Recommendations that are meaningful and long-term changes have not been done.
Okay.
I think what Carolyn, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there are a series of recommendations that came out of the steering committee that were really procedural.
Yeah.
They really did not go into long-term goals for change.
Yep.
They were more of, can we have someone more visible, or can we have our two classrooms closer together? Those really should be more procedural things. They're
Yeah.
not goal and change, and
So
is that what you're?
Kind of. I mean, I was surprised too by how many recommendations they had ready for me. That they were ready to report out in pretty efficient terms. That a long conversation was had, and they each group had 2 salient takeaways upon which they had agreed already, and were sharing out in that way. And as I said, a lot of them needed to be further explored. But as Louise says, you know, a couple of them were okay. Yes, like, you know, we can do that. Some of them, some of the recommendations or things that they wanted to do next year aren't.
It feels like, again, I viewed the middle school study as really a strategic conversation, out of which there would be a strategic change, but also some tactical. And what I think I hear you telling me is that we've got a whole bunch of tactical things that we're ready to roll out, which I clearly think is fantastic. Tactical, if we can do it and it makes sense, great. But what I'm, for me, the strategic conversation is not over. It really isn't, and that's what I'm just concerned, that the strategic conversation continues on. I'd love to see the tactical, I'd love to understand what the steering committee reported out on, but the strategic conversation.
But the strategic conversation is, they, you know, the simple stuff like they love the bell schedule, that kind of thing, that's not changing unless someone comes up with a very good reason why it should. But some of the strategic things around the creativity that could be within the schedule. So people said, for example, they reported out and said, no, we all agree, we're in agreement that we love the bell schedule. And my pushback to them was, okay, my dream was that people were going to come and tell me that because we have a trimester schedule, that we wanted to be able to push in some project-based learning, and so that each grade would have a trimester focus, and that we would decide that we were going to do this cross-curriculum work, and that in the fall it was all about the 7th grade in the first trimester, that, you know, from 7:30 to 11, 3 days a week, everyone was coming together to do something, you know, to explore what the projects looked like. So those things are under the goal in terms of systemic changes. Like, those aren't things that would become part of our culture immediately. Those are things that would require more exploration, but would speak to our shared vision of what it means to be in a middle school. It means being able to work across different classrooms. It means being able to be more creative during the day and flexible with the time. So some of the recommendations for sure have continued conversation to be had, and people that want to meet this summer and brainstorm, you know, what would that look like? I guess in responding to, was the steering committee over? No, because I don't think they themselves see it as over. But there aren't, you know, 10 planned meetings or 5 faculty meetings that are already dedicated to that group.
Do you think it would be possible then that we could get a summary, and I don't wanna have you come back or Carol
No,
come
but I
back.
can forward you my notes from the meeting for sure.
Yeah, and just say, okay, these are the types of the tactical things that came up during the course of this process that we're doing, we've done, they're gonna happen. And then you had commented that each of the subcommittees had 2 salient bullet points, so what are those by subcommittee? Cause there was one on culture, there was one on
Yeah.
grading, they were all different ones. And just, you know, requires further meeting or something, cause you mentioned
What's the
July and
follow-up? What
October.
are the
Well, what's the-
suggestions? Yep.
What are the suggestions and what's the plan follow-up from strategic? And then I think we can marry that with then the first presentation and see how far along we are. Is that what you're trying to get to, Katie?
I am, I just, I've got a little cognitive dissonance going, cause I honestly thought that we were halfway to the goal, and now I kind of feel like I'm given the wrap-up.
That wasn't my intent.
But,
I do not see this as a wrap-up, and,
Okay.
and I will take full target on that one. We are not halfway there.
Good,
We are
that
far
answers
from
the
over.
question.
These committees will have some serious goals. I think we need some research base on a great deal of this. If indeed we're saying the bell schedule works, where do you have the foundation for this? I think that both Carrie and Carolyn are going to have some very serious conversations, not only with the steering committee, but with the faculty as a whole, as to what do we look like? What is this identity called middle school? And how is it unique in and of itself? And is it student growth centered? And that's where I need to see the vision that I've said right along, that we go from 5th grade to 9th grade. And within that time, we set fire to these children to learn. And that's going to be the basis of, are we setting them on fire to learn forever?
that's
Do
the
we give them
strategy
the-
piece that
Right.
to
So-
me is.
The goals, then the culture are what needs to be defined. In my mind, it's setting them on fire. There's obviously another way to create that. It's the culture, the environment that Carrie has been working on and what the steering committee is trying to define. And what I'm hearing is it's not well yet defined. So for me, we're not halfway there, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's an ongoing process, and I think a great deal has been done. And I think what is happening is the little stuff is all of the things that have been unvoiced.
Yeah.
I like my classroom here, I like the bell stations, or I like, music between classes. We have to uncover all of that first, and I think that's what's been happening. We're getting to that. That and the other piece that Carrie was talking about earlier this year, that teachers now have to feel comfortable taking that risk. That it's okay to be creative, it's okay to try something. It's okay to say, all right, I didn't cover all of the standards, but I went very deep into this, and it was the need for these children to understand. Is it project-based learning that we need, what is it? And it's muddy, and I understand your frustration, but it's not really clear.
I think that for me, the school improvement plan, needs to have things that are achievable within the frame, that feel concrete. So these were the most complex, and yet addressable ideas that came out of their recommendations. Some of them didn't need to be, as I said, something we can address. These are things we should, I think if we purposefully dedicated time to them next year, including the other bullet of the tier 2 intervention strategies at faculty meetings and modeling and talking about what they look like, those were things I think that teachers had less of a clear idea of what they could look like in practice, or what it would feel like to feel more confident about strategies or changing the school culture to reflect PBIS. But the groundwork has already been laid.
Okay.
And then whatever is, see, I feel like so many other things will be the result of this. So if we implement changes around that are motivated by PBIS, because that was supposed to be a programmatic thing that people wanted to have happen, then if that ekes in the midst of all these other conversations, I think people will be able to say, oh, this feels good, so maybe that would, maybe we should go this route, or I think it will lend itself to exploring other ways that the middle school can change, that may or may not be reflective of the recommendations that the steering committee felt were relevant this June.
Well, and I guess, so I appreciate your perspective of like, you're trying to reflect things that you can accomplish in a school improvement plan within a year time frame, and you've got a whole series of very good tactical recommendations that you've got from the steering committee, and I can see that you're trying to chunk off, 5 of them here in the bullet points or whatever, 4 of them here in the bullet points. For me, the piece that was the most important thing out of this year was not losing sight of the bigger strategic discussion around the middle school. So if this is what we're tactically biting off to address in our school improvement plan that's based on the work to date, that's great. I think the more momentum we can show, the fact that input from the teachers is being reflective in changes is all good. Like you wanna keep that momentum going. For me, I don't wanna lose sight of the bigger prize here, which is the broader strategic conversation around what do we want our middle school to be and how do we set those students on fire. And maybe I'm mixing 2 conversations here, but.
Yeah, this was not intended to be representative of the entire middle school
Okay.
study. It was just felt at school council that this was such an important initiative for the middle high school that we wanted it to be in the school improvement plan.
Let's get going on the pieces
So
that
we're
we
gonna
could.
get going on some of these pieces, and this states to our community that it's important.
Okay.
That the middle school study is important, and these are the parts that we're gonna address specifically in the school improvement plan, but it doesn't negate the bigger picture of.
Okay. It's just when I heard the comment, the steering committee's reported out, it kind of felt like closed down, shut
I would
up.
hope that the steering committee would report out, 5 times a year.
Okay,
I mean, that's,
that's.
I would have enjoyed that during this year as well. But I
Okay.
mean, the expectation wasn't that you wait until
No.
the end to figure out what's going on.
Right, okay.
I was just gonna add though, as I was reviewing, doing a lot of work for documents that needed to be done in the last couple of weeks, I was going through a ton of communications, documentations, et cetera. And I did actually notice some kind of disconnect in how the middle school study was discussed and understood. So maybe it needs to be made really clear, because when I was looking at it, I was like, there's some possibility for miscommunication here. And I don't know if there has been or not, but, and when I look at the middle school study presentation that we had in April, they are huge questions. So, when I saw it in the school improvement plan, I was like, okay, great, there's gonna be the plan, some really big questions being asked that'll get reported out, that will be something we're looking at as a school for next year. So that's how I read that part, but, some of the questions on this, the middle school study, they're big, big questions. What should it look like? Which to me means like, and what the structure looks like, and they talk about parent and student surveys and that kind of thing, which I would think will be reported back to us next year, so, right? But anyway, maybe it's just worth revisiting at some point so we're all really clear on it.
Yeah, I do think I honestly need a visual around.
I think you're asking for a strategic plan for the change for the middle school. Am I right? Like a mini strategic plan?
Yeah, I feel like.
What is your vision, what is your theory of action, what are you going to do?
I kind of feel like we're at that point, because otherwise, I worry, and again, maybe my worry is misplaced, that we're gonna have a series of rolling tactical recommendations, which are great, but it doesn't, to me, fit the objective that we set out, or at least in my mind, what I saw as the objective, which was the bigger conversation around.
If I can make a recommendation that, that Carol and Carrie, possibly whoever is involved in this whole project, have a discussion and probably solidify a bit better for you the plan. I think that it needs to be a bigger conversation, probably come back to you.
Yeah, because and again, I apologize, because it kind of, I'm obviously dragging a bigger project into what is the school improvement plan conversation, but the two have to be related in order for us to have a meaningful outcome here.
And I guess I would feel negligent if I didn't put some aspects of it into the school improvement plan, because it would make it seem as though it wasn't really relevant to the work that we want to do.
And
So to speak to Ellen's point, I mean, that's why I felt it was, and was supported by the council to call out the things that we think we can investigate, potentially address this year. And because they were deemed by the steering committee to be things that they felt would make an impact and would start to inspire all sorts of different change. And I guess it's sometimes the feedback from the teachers or the steering committee seems contradictory in terms of how excited people are to change, how eager they are to move forward. So I think, it's my responsibility as the principal to kind of work my way through that as well.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I'm very glad that you have this in your school improvement plan. I just, and I think we should be implementing as we go, the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's clear, that needs to happen or is overdue in happening. It's just, for me, it's how does that fit into the bigger picture of what we started, in terms of a broader middle school study.
I think Alan had a good point about the points here, though, because if we look at this, we're really going to be an action step in looking at prioritizing goals. So they're going to have to be identified and prioritized. And then the professional development that has to go into those goals and how it incorporates PBIS and Tier 2. So I think there's a good foundation here for a direction, but I think we do need updates on what's going on periodically.
Okay, so let's go to the next.
Implementing BYOD, last year's improvement plan said that it would be a continuation, that we could look for, anticipate a more comprehensive approach to that. So, this is just us doing it, so the actual implementation isn't the improvement plan, because that's absolutely happening. It's our response to it. And so conversation revealed that we should continue to dedicate some faculty time to troubleshooting and modeling what's working and what's not, and figuring out how we connect with the tech committee to do that. But also, really, there was an important request made that we collect some meaningful data on student participation rates. How many students, just in terms of, some of it will be formal collection, some will be informal. When people are walking around the building, what is the percentage of time how often are you seeing it in classrooms? Are we seeing a problem with students who are unable to or unwilling to participate? That seemed to come up a lot as a parent concern about students would actually bring the device. I think those of us in the building have a great deal of faith that will happen regularly, and as you said, if we add it in as an expectation. So there's just some bullets there, some suggestions on the kinds of information we could collect, just to make sure that we're recognizing things that are important and relevant, because it is a huge shift in learning for us, and I think it's pretty exciting. So that was in there because it had already been promised to be in there, but really just as a follow-through. We can't just drop the devices in and walk away, so.
And I think the data that you're gonna collect, we'll be using that data before we know it to justify.
You can thank your colleague for that.
Yeah.
It was, yes, we have gone and asked for these Chromebooks for classrooms, let's demonstrate that. That's why there is a student log that reveals how often they're using the learner device.
Did Ellen show you the scars that were associated with those conversations? Maybe they're just mental scars.
And then lastly was to continue to use the strategic plan to really push for UDL, Universal Design for Learning, to be embedded in the curriculum areas. And so we had several departments as their professional practice SMART goals this year work to collaborate on adding in some of the principles of UDL, so whether it was multiple means of engagement or representation, putting that into existing units already. That will continue for sure. We will do a better job of modeling practices and being explicit about it. So when we see UDL in action, to call it that and to point it out to other people, and to, I guess in my personal experience, when I have conversations with teachers, or we're in smaller groups or whatever, and we're being faithful to the 3 principles of UDL, people are continually surprised by how difficult it isn't. I mean, people, I'll say, so we're doing, it's like, so we're in UDL mode right now, because you have, you know, you have it on the screen, you have a hard copy in front of you, you can get it through your email, whatever it is you need to do, and I said, like, sometimes it's just that simple.
You're like, wait, I get credit?
This is good. So I think just constantly acknowledging when we see it happening helps to make it feel more cultural and accessible, and not just another thing that people have to do, but a lot of the time people are already doing it. And, you know, for incumbent upon me and the department heads and the administrators to make note of when we see UDL in action in classrooms, so that we can talk about that at faculty meetings, to say, you know, doing walkthroughs with John Fortin this week, we were in 10 math rooms, and in 6 of them I saw real evidence. And I think that would be good conversation for the faculty to have. But it does support, it supports something that I feel pretty passionately about, and that of course is an important strategic element for the district. So to put it in the school improvement plan means that we're really dedicated to making sure that it's a more vibrant part of our school culture.
Right. We're good to move? Okay.
Yes, please, Mrs. Mark.
Actually, it's for both you and Dr. DiPiera. Could we get the school improvement plans on the website? I noticed in Deer Hill, we have 2014-15. And I think having the history is good, you know, to look at. And it's in the family tab. I didn't notice it on the high school.
It's under, I was using it. The 15, 16, and 16, 17 ones are posted to both websites.
Where?
What tab?
What tab?
About, we were told to put them under, about CMHS.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
about our school.
And it should be
Okay.
on the same tab on each, so,
Okay.
if you want to,
I'm looking at it.
yeah, I'll have.
Well, I mean, there's a
I'm
tab.
pretty sure I've got something beyond 2014.
Well, yeah, but
So this is where,
I
right,
think you have
because
also, and I
before
think it's
2014, we
about-
wouldn't have been told where to put it, and then we switched websites. So if you go to our school and that drop down,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Okay, I
say
didn't go there.
SIP, but if you go to our school and you look at the drop down where you go to about CMHS or about Deer Hill or about Joseph Osgood, then it pops up on that
It's
screen.
supposed to be aligned in each school under about our district or about our school. So that's where it should be in each school. We tried to align it.
Okay, I didn't
so-
look there, so forgive me for that. But here's a thought, I mean, it's the school council that works on putting the plan together. We have a tab for school council on every, would that not make sense? And then maybe connect the dots with parents, like, what is, I don't know.
The Deer Hill School has school improvement plan 15-16 on about the school. So
Okay, look under family.
under family resources, it's just student handbook, bullying, substance abuse, Blood and Connect. You're saying you would like it under family?
No, I'm not saying I would like it I would like it somewhere.
It
It's up to you guys to decide. It is, okay.
on every school is, and we
And
made
it's
it
about the
uniform.
school, okay.
It's
Okay.
uniform under our
Okay.
school, and because it's
All
an
right.
improvement plan, it really goes under that, and school council is there as well.
Okay,
So
I
it's
didn't
just
look
a
deep
different
enough.
tab.
okay.
Deer Hill has 15-16, and the middle high school does as well.
I'm sure 16-17 is on some other tab too. So.
Well, 16-17, right, and it should go under our school.
Okay. I'm fine.
But thank you for mentioning that, because it's, again, it brings to point that I know that you saw on Blackboard Connect that John and Cassie have put together a survey
Yeah.
asking about the use of the website and its usability and friendliness and so on. So I'm waiting for that feedback, and part of that will be, and the reason why the 3 of them are still working next year is to align those websites so that they're clear as to where we find what under each tab. So that's common.
It's made
Semantic
huge
kind of
progress.
thing. But thank you for mentioning that. Anything else?
No, for me, no, I'm waiting to see if there's anything else for anybody.
Oh, good night. Actually, you have to stay.
Yes.
It's a sleepover. It's a sleepover.
We do have the district handbook, and I think I have a few few changes for you in that.
We're gonna have to.
Thank you very
So what
much.
else you say for the district chapter?
You can if you like, there are 3 changes. The first one is the MOA in page 51 is obviously not the current one. So and that has not been signed on the current one, so when that does come in, that will be replaced. The other has to do with 2 policies. One is the tobacco use policy on 74. It will also have an accompanying page about alcohol policy, which I gave you a copy in the attachment, so that we will include both. When I looked at the alcohol and tobacco use, it was not as specific as the tobacco, so I think both are reasonable to have. The other is I looked over the summation of the restraint policy. I know that Mary Buchanan has looked this over, but I'm going to have her give it another once over to make sure it's very current.
And that it ties to JKAA.
Right, and that that was of December 16th, 2015.
Yep.
And since the changes have been since then, I'm pretty confident. The other thing that I would add to this one is, rather than add the entire lengthy restraint policy, I'd put the hyperlink to the policy. The third one is a rather exciting change, actually. It's the digital learning. If we look on page 80. We talked, this was obviously sent to Jennifer, Jennifer Cerritos to format, make sure that the templates were clear and accurate, and that we had everything we needed in pagination and so on. Since then, we've done quite a bit of work on the policies. Both were technology agreement, which we agreed was formerly policy EDCA-D on page 80, was actually not a policy, was actually an agreement of I will. So that was the one that we had deleted, and then we implemented a different one, which was on page 81, I believe, and 82. And that is a deletion, but the addition are the other documents that I gave you on the 3 agreements for each of the schools. There's the student and parent network access and technology agreement, which was presented to Capitol earlier this year. And to their approval, much that they wanted a lot more, but that was what they agreed was beneficial and acceptable. And then I have to give Sue credit for some really delightful pieces here. I Am a Digital Citizen is for Osgood. And the I Am a Digital Citizen, Sue, Carolyn, and I spoke today and thought, this is so good, this I Am a Digital Citizen, that we want it everywhere, especially in the middle school. So we are having laminated posters made to place everywhere we can possibly think. We are ordering in abundance, so it may deplete that surplus out. And
That's a note on which I make some.
Lamination is very expensive.
And we're going to make them available to teachers at Deer Hill as well as grades 6, 7, and 8. So we will be aligned, hopefully district-wide, on this is what it means to be a digital citizen. So,
And these are documents we'd be looking for actual signature on.
Yeah.
So that it's, it really is pushed home that this is what we're expecting and this is what a digital citizen is. So.
And it's very necessary. So I'm very excited about the posters because I think it'll be fun. The English teacher says, oh yes, we want posters everywhere.
And this one gets signed by the
Yes.
middle
Yes,
school.
correct.
Yes.
Middle
Well,
high
you know what
school.
we did with the technology committee, I showed these to them as well.
Yeah.
And what they felt was that while the more detailed one you have, Katie, in right now, should be in here, and be signed by the high school, that the other one is probably more appropriate for our middle school kiddos. that they felt that they're responsible for the bigger one, but when you're trying to explain to middle school kids, 6, 7, and 8, that the other one would be more appropriate.
The only thing that I really thought was really powerful about this one was the last thing around BYOD. I mean, it's so important that they understand that they take responsibility for their device, that they're, again,
Maybe then,
Maybe just
I
add
just add
something
that
under
to the,
take care of school
somehow I
property.
managed to get that,
I-
squeeze it in.
Yeah.
for some, there has to be something for the middle schoolers around drilling the BYOD, bring the device, bring it charged.
Yeah, so maybe I can figure
Yeah,
out
I
how to
just,
Yep.
format this to get it in.
I know.
Maybe second
Excuse what-
column, maybe underneath one of the headings would work.
I'll work on seeing if we can.
We're already working way too many
I
hours.
know. Well,
Now you've made it a project, she's gonna be in again on Friday.
well, it's just the piece that the take care of school property
Yes,
works really well for the Osgood Deer Hill model, but it's a different model for the middle school around, it's
Right.
taking care of your property.
You know, actually, maybe
Right.
that's instead of,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
fix that piece for the middle school.
You just
Right.
modify it, you don't.
So then I don't have to try and figure out.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly. Take care of your BYOD property.
Yes.
Right.
Louise, on page 9, this Cohasset School Department personnel, would you consider putting phone and email?
You know, it was on there before, and, what was there for many of them were, personal phones. So I can do the extensions. I think we didn't have the town extensions at this point.
Yeah, extensions or email, I just think,
Are you saying email as well?
well,
I think there were phone numbers on the older, on the former. Emails are always first initial, last name @cohassetk12.org.
so this is what was in last year's high school. School personnel actually had our addresses, home numbers,
Right.
and email, which I think is too much. Central office, phone, no email, and then the middle high school phone, no email.
We can do the school phone.
Yeah, I would do school phone, I wouldn't do any personal cell phones,
Right.
and I would just do school committee email.
I have a couple of little changes on that page too, page 9,
Before, but I
but
think,
finish the thought.
if we're looking at email, it may be easier to put the explanation that
At the
all
bottom.
emails are first initial, last name @cohassetk12.org.
And that's just the format.
And then the format for everyone fits, except for Mark Kelly.
I just think to have a department listing without a method of contacting is,
Okay,
yeah.
but I'm
So
just,
I don't
do you
care if
want
it's
the
phone.
individual emails at each?
I don't care, I just think we
Okay.
have to,
Okay.
One more comment on that page, Alicia is on the org chart, but she doesn't fit neatly into the categories to the left, but she should probably be on there.
Thank you. Yes, she most certainly should be.
Maybe under district responsibilities
Right, you could change
Or
the heading
central
and then it would,
office.
or central office.
I think she should have her own title myself,
Yeah.
to be MECO director. But I will take care of it.
Sure, and under school committee, next to Katie's name, it should say vice chair.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And then under district responsibilities, Ron Menard is chief information officer.
Thank you.
It says
I
chief
catch that.
instructional officer. Actually, we gave him a big new job.
that'd be fun to inform
same
him
for
of that
Barton
tomorrow.
too.
Yes.
Actually, they're listed in their, I think that was their title.
Instructional?
No,
No, information.
You know, I think it was written somewhere else that way a
Yes,
while
I
ago,
agree.
though,
Yes.
and it got carried over.
It got carried
'Cause
over.
I remember
It's on the
seeing
org
that as
chart.
well.
As instructional.
Okay.
Oh, so the org chart needs to
Yeah.
change
No,
too.
chief information
Oh, no, it's,
officer.
no,
Information.
no, it's
right.
right, I'm sorry, I was
Version.
looking at the Osgood, instructional, sorry. Osgood.
Chief
Somewhere,
information
chief
officer.
information officer.
And
We
that
also
might be
need
where it
to,
came from,
Right,
if
this
it's
whole
listed
change-
in the
I do
buildings,
remember
then-
seeing it
needs to
somewhere.
change a bit as well.
So, yeah.
We are currently adding a person to the responsibilities of IT. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll add that, I'll redo this page.
Okay, great.
On page 18, Title I of the Elementary Secondary Education Act, it still has Sue Skeever. Should that be Patrick?
Yes,
Okay. Sorry, Sue.
that's okay.
Sorry, sir.
Title one needs to change.
You're happy to give up your Title I?
We already talked about the restraint policy.
Do we still have that grade 6 reading remediation enrichment program? Is that?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, say
The
again.
grade 6 reading remediation enrichment program, is that
No.
still
What page is that?
26? I thought that, yeah, it's used as an example of the tier 3 supports.
Correct, no, there's not.
I had one comment back on page 21. We're calling this curriculum accommodation plan, and I guess I was looking for tiered support, like, and I didn't know whether you chose the curriculum accommodation plan as the way you, as the headline that you wanted, but as a parent or as a consumer, I was looking for an explanation of MTSS. So when I was looking at the index, I was like, where is it? I know you guys put it in here. I don't think people are gonna understand.
I understand, but DCAP or curriculum accommodation plan is under the Massachusetts General Law.
Okay.
That's the title of chapter 71.
Well, could you maybe put it in parentheses
Yeah.
then?
Because people are,
So that if people are looking for tiered support or.
yeah,
It's interesting. 'cause I-
AKA tiered support.
Mhm.
People, I know,
I can put "and" in there because it's more than that, but I will put curriculum accommodation plan and tiered support.
that'd be great, thank you,
Yeah.
because I think that's the thing that
Good
people
point.
may be looking for.
I think the district did use that terminology a while ago. I was gonna look through my
Tiered
file.
support or?
No, decaf.
Yes.
But you
Most
don't,
do,
you don't
yeah.
hear it here, but I think I've seen that in this district before, but it sort of depends
Yes, because I put it
who's in
together,
charge
you
of
did.
distributing it.
Yes, my first 2 years here was
Yeah.
a district accommodation plan, and then it's a curriculum accommodation plan to go with it.
Right.
We do have one, right.
But I think that the language changes sort of depending on how
Yes.
people know it, but I think if it's the law, that's important to
Yeah.
keep
But
the
I will
law.
put that together.
Okay.
Great.
Anything else?
I had a question about that, it says the district accommodation plan is then customized for each building. I was looking for this in the other handbooks, but I didn't see it.
I think they decided to just have it in, is it just in this one?
It's
Yeah.
just in
Just
this
in
one,
this
it's,
one.
I'm trying to figure out
Because
where
if
you're
it's
reading that.
customized.
What page is it, Jen?
It's page 21.
Okay.
Look at the intro paragraph, Louise, the second sentence,
The middle high school.
it talks about the middle high school.
Yeah, it's a little,
Like,
when
why
I was
we-
looking for it in the other.
Okay.
Oh, I see what
So-
you're saying.
So maybe if we strike that sentence,
Yeah.
so it
Yes.
appears to be a district
It
wide.
is district-wide, and I think this was probably lifted from the high school, middle high school handbook, and the wording was not changed. Thank you for catching that.
Page 99 and 100, the safety and security assessment. I'm not sure that this belongs in parent-student handbook. It's a year old at this point. And most, if not all of these have already happened.
I kinda had the same
Correct.
reaction, which
Yep.
is that this isn't gonna stand the test of time.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs
I
in.
agree.
Which page?
Again,
99
this
and
is
100.
dated, but I
Yep.
will take that out.
Online.
Thank you.
We'll just have the school safety plans.
anything else? Glad to have Hawkeyes.
This is amazing that we got this.
Yes.
This is just, I was never, I've said it to several people, I was never so excited to look at handbooks, cause like, it made sense.
Yes, all of a sudden, everything's cohesively, yes.
If you saw what the pages looked like before they got
Oh,
together.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, we know.
Just on that topic again, the last section, the Cohasset Public Schools Safety Plan, starting on page 101.
Mhm.
If I'm recalling correctly, and I could be wrong, this was an internal document. Because when we were presenting the assessment, I said, oh no, I got this off the website, and the building principals last year were saying, no, and I couldn't remember.
There are two. There's an internal one and there's this one.
Oh,
I mean, this one, and then there's the other that you had accessed.
okay,
This one just gives the terminology on what alert, lockdown,
Okay.
inform is, and what the crisis team, which is public. This is just general public information. The one that you accessed,
was the black box.
correct.
Okay, I would ju-
And
I
I
would-
do have that one.
Okay, I would take the title page off and just put a bullet, like a headline, Cohasset Public School Safety Plan.
So it
Sure.
looks like the rest of them.
So it looks like the rest of the book and not as something separate, and take that off. Cause it's also
Mhm.
dated,
And that would differentiate from the other. They look alike.
yeah.
You're so consistent.
This is exciting, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to say thank you to Jennifer Saritas, who
Oh, I don't know.
Goes cross-eyed
this was
every
for
day.
April vacation.
Yeah.
Because I handed her sheets that were either copied or scanned or not well printed, and she just.
All different fonts.
She came with all these little tabs, and I went, oh, don't come near me. But it was all, she was very, very diligent about making sure, so.
Oh, just one last quick thing.
Yep.
I think, did someone already say John Tuffy is
Yes.
Tufty? Did we get that?
Oh,
No.
Do that again?
misspelled?
Yeah, you're Tufty in the
Oh, I am.
personnel, so, yeah, I think I'm seeing it right, I could be off. I did mark it earlier.
Oh,
Right, and
TUFTY.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know if that's your nickname around the central office. Sorry. I'm gonna stop.
I am trying to find it.
Page 9.
Yeah, just on the personnel listing, same thing.
See, I was hoping you wouldn't find that because it's inside.
See, that's what I thought. I like it.
You kinda like that, John.
I do too.
He says it's Gaelic.
That may be the
Gaelic.
Gaelic. Maybe the Gaelic spelling.
You and the instructional officer tomorrow are gonna have a nice.
That would be really funny.
Tell him he's got a new job.
Ron would see
Now
how
the
you
instructional
Um,
officer.
have a heart attack. Right, and while we are on the subject of removing Sue's name and putting Pat's in, we have been discussing a title for Sue, since she is going to be staying on a consultant basis, but we really don't want the name consultant because she's more than that. So I just wanted you to know that we're still playing with something with digital learning.
Goddess.
God, it's a digital learning, all things professional
Actually, we thought of
development.
I
DDLC, but,
think the
Digi-
teachers could come up with a great name.
You think so?
Yeah.
They keep those nicknames secret.
No, the teachers-
Guru.
Yes.
Okay, so the point of that comment is if we see something like that, don't be alarmed.
Don't be
It's
alarmed.
not-
Say,
it's
"Oh my
not-
God,
It's
who's
not
that?"
somebody new from.
Right, and it
Yes.
is out of that whole piece of continuing our device
Right.
implementation. And Sue will be moving out of central office and into the middle high school.
Somewhere.
Somewhere, we are still scouting
I
out.
like that,
Prime
puts you right in the
spaces.
heartbeat
In the
of
heart of the.
Yes,
People will
we
know where to
decided she
find
needed
you.
to be at a place where she would have access and into the maddening crowd.
Yep.
So,
Should be wonderful.
very excited,
Good.
just
That's great.
not letting her go. And Patrick has been in.
And she'll be in a secret location, so we can't find her.
Only certain teachers will be able to meet with her.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
We've already started some meaningful conversations with Carolyn about how they will how they will interact and communicate so that the message is clear on where we're going in the process and the alignment. So in a very short time, we've made some great inroads, so it's very exciting. And we're gonna find out where she is and haunt her.
Like, where's
Where's
Waldo?
Waldo?
Where's
Yeah.
Waldo?
Where's
DDLC? Where's Skeever? So it's exciting. Patrick has been in, we have keys for him, we have a phone ordered, he has a computer. He's looked at his office and, we've looked at what he needs and configured. We've had, Chris Haggerty in to look at what he needs and, he's ready to go. And he will be going to get his fob, tomorrow or the next day. So things are rolling right along. He's very excited, ready to come in.
He was at the STEM,
He did.
He was there.
He went to STEM, he went to second grade promotion activity, he went to symposium at the Mill High School, the eighth graders were presenting. So we did see how we are polluting water and I will never eat fish again. Yes, he has been very present, so he's been, and the meet and greet was really well attended. He is very excited, and he's been in email back and forth quite frequently, so.
That's great.
They're still crying in Marshfield.
I know.
Every time I drive through, they shudder.
I can feel the rain. We are also looking for a mentor for Pat, and he prefers to be called Pat, but, so I will keep you posted.
Good.
Exciting.
Very good.
I think we got one right there. Add that to the title.
Oh my gosh.
That should really be the guru.
I'd be like one of those people with all those like MSW, LIT,
Yeah, right.
PhD, like,
The alphabet soup.
oh my gosh.
The A to Z guru.
Yeah.
You have an update on enrollment, which basically means it hasn't changed. So it's very accurate. I get monthly updates from Tijal, and we had one student, again, always have a difference somewhere, we always find it. And it's usually that she's not withdrawn it from IPASS, so we are copacetic.
I'm so
That's-
excited to do the rollover this year.
That's
It's
fabulous.
gonna be
I know.
a, it's gonna be a
gonna be
We've
a whole
also
different
simplified the rollover for teacher evaluation criteria in that the principals and with Tijal's help and the instructional session we had yesterday, we are going to put into IPASS the teacher ratings directly, so they are accurate and Tijal has fewer errors when that comes in, so we're streamlining that also, so it should be very accurate. Trying.
I was shocked when you guys revealed the layers and the tabs to iPass. I mean, it is just, it keeps on going, and you wonder how you could ever keep that volume of information, especially about the teachers, up to date. It was,
Right now, there are fields 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. There are 7 fields that the principal will have to fill in for each person holding an educator license. That means everyone in the district before the end of June, beginning of July.
and that's a new process.
And that was something that Tijal was doing,
Yeah.
so it was an around-the-clock kind of thing. What we were doing was taking Baseline Edge, which is our evaluation system, and rolling it into IPASS, and then she would receive pages and pages of errors that were really not related to the rating. So this way, we're putting the ratings right into the fields. And when the principals do them, then we have reduced, first of all, they see what they are and correct them, but it reduces the workload for Tijal, so she can do more of the IT work that she should be
More
doing.
value add versus just the data entry,
Right.
yeah. That's
More,
more.
it was just tedious, so that's exciting too, we're getting there.
Very
You have a gift, yay, you like gifts. a gift from the Cohasset Basketball Boosters Club. And they are asking you to approve their gift of $3,181.
Okay, so this is, this was gifted to us to assist with our high school basketball assistant coaches' salaries. And again, you know, this is an amount of money that is outside of our budget, and we greatly appreciate all of the boosters' help that we get in our schools and our athletics programs. So I would accept a motion to, could I have a motion to approve this gift in the amount of $3,181?
So moved?
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, roll call, please.
Barbara Stephanie.
Katie Dugan?
I, Gina Stino.
I have to abstain, Owen Mark.
I, Jen Madden.
My son's a coach. He's an assistant coach.
Okay. All right, until Katie gets back, let's just have our brief discussion on the benchmarking strategy. This is a continuation of efforts that Ellen has expended over the last 2 years. We really didn't have a lot of information in front of us in this kind of format. And she took on this huge task with this huge spreadsheet of tracking all of this information for us. So the reason we're getting it tonight is because Jennifer is going to be on vacation. And I just wanted to make sure that, because it's a little bit out of the norm, the size, the formatting and everything for the printing would be difficult for somebody who wasn't familiar with how to do it. So I asked her if she would prepare it for us so that we would have it, and it won't be coming in your packet for the next time. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Jennifer totally appreciates that.
Now we have to wait for Mrs. Dugan to come back.
Thank you for doing this. While you were waiting, I'll tell you that, you know, one of the things for the BYOD that we've been trying to accomplish was to have our vendor who we buy our Chromebooks through offer us an opportunity for parents to
Yeah.
buy through them, and we got it.
Oh, that's
All the
awesome.
time, we have it, and this is a flyer that I'm gonna put on the website so that people
Oh,
will
that's
see
terrific.
it. And we've got it at $170 a
That's wonderful.
Chromebook.
And I am taking Bart and Sue with me the next time I buy a car.
I know, well, take Bart. Bart is, because they came in originally with one price, and we said, well, you know, do you think you could kind of talk them into lower?
Well, when you consider how many of them we're buying,
Yeah.
you would think that,
So
What's the
this
difference
is the
today?
actual model that we are purchasing. And, you know, as we said to parents last Tuesday night at the parent night, we're not saying you have to buy this, we're not in the business of
Right.
promoting anybody.
No, but-
But this is one option
right,
that people could go to and buy.
I think people were looking for the
Yeah.
guidance, I mean,
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to
Yeah.
give people
It gives them a-
guidance, yeah.
At that meeting, we did show them 4 places that Bart and Kyle in 10 minutes had located that were under $200. Just so that they knew it's doable and they're out there. I think this gives them a really easy way to go. Click on it. It's like shopping anywhere on the internet.
Right.
Put it in your cart, fill out all the information you need, and they'll ship it to you.
no, that's great.
I think it's awesome. This came up in school council, and the comment, because I think Situate did a similar.
Yes, they did.
A similar thing, and, what the feedback was that because the school was associated with the purchase, there were parents who thought that the school was therefore responsible, was the conduit, so that they So I would just make it really clear that you're getting the Cohasset Public School discount, but it's not a Cohasset Public School machine, it's your
Right,
machine
right.
and your
Good point,
warranty and
good
your,
point.
you know,
Right.
don't bring it to our help desk to be fixed.
And I believe me, correct me, Katie, I think that was one of the things that did come up at the meeting with the parents, and we did try to express to people, you know, responsibility of what the device is yours.
Yeah,
And it's your, you know, if
Yeah.
it gets broken,
yeah,
if it's a simple fix that we could do like that,
Right.
maybe we could do it, but otherwise,
Yeah.
it's gonna be yours too. But it's a good point too, because not everybody was there at,
Yeah.
you know, so
Right.
good point to let people know.
I might just put BYOD instead of Cohasset Public Schools, like,
or do they have to mention Cohasset
You
Public?
could say special pricing,
Oh,
something
oh, here,
special
back-
pricing.
Backslash, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
special pricing offered to, uh, students or families of Cohasset Public School students.
Mhm.
Could we
Something
just
like
do an
that.
ink blot that, ink drop on it that says, Cohasset Family Special?
Oh, yeah.
Could see
What
if it
is
could
the
be-
difference in price if you were to go and purchase this?
They're kind of, this one, originally when they talked with us was over $200. It was, I think it was in the neighborhood of $236.
Okay.
But Bart, super negotiator, was able to get them down to this. You can get Chromebooks like any device
Mhm.
that are low price all the way up
High
to
price, yeah.
$400 or $500.
In a
This is
variety
all-
of names,
Exactly.
you know, manufacturers.
Right. This one, when the IT folks were looking at what should we buy, did some background checking on, you know, is Acer or HP, they're all pretty comparable.
Mhm.
Right.
A lot of the reviews they got on the Acer seemed to be, that would fit our needs, and we could get prices that seemed to work for us. So this is the one we've been going with. You know, it's not to say in another, if you went and bought some more at a later date, that you might not buy a different model.
Right.
This
Right.
was also tested out, I think when we were looking at, laptops for teachers, we gave several out, and I believe, maybe it was a Dare Hill for students or for staff. I gave them out with Bart, so we had 3 or 4 different brands that they tried out, and Acer was their preferred, that's how this came about. So it was really from their trying it out, ease of use, what they felt was a comfortable computer to use, so,
Mhm.
so we had input from them as well.
yeah, I feel like 2 Januaries ago, you guys, you
Right.
did that test, and then we landed out putting in the order in like
Right.
March or April after people had kind of.
Exactly,
Exactly.
that's what it was, yeah.
No, I think for the parents, the biggest thing was, you know, I know what I know the specs, you know, and you did a nice job of covering what the specs were in terms of 2 gig minimum, 4 gig preferred, but this kind of simplifies it a little bit for me. I know if I click here.
And I think that's the reason why, I know that's the reason why Situate did it,
Yep.
and I think it just makes it an easier, you know, because I know some people look at
It's
this
gobbledygook.
stuff here, right, and say,
Exactly.
this is like a
Yeah.
whole foreign language.
Right.
I have no idea what that means. So that this gives them an option to say,
Yeah.
okay, we wanna buy one, and here's an easy way to do it.
It reminds me of the first time I bought a computer, I went to the teacher next door who's the guru, and I said, what do you own? Can you write it down? Thank you.
Yeah.
And I went to the store, this is what I want.
Give me one of these.
Oh, that's funny.
So,
If he knew what he was doing, I didn't have to think
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
I just mentioned that the reason that we had that benchmarking information in our packets and on the agenda is because Jen's going to be on vacation. So it was easier to get her to duplicate the information for us now. Okay? So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent evaluation. And I must tell you that everyone spent copious hours
Thank you for that, that's great, thank you for doing that.
putting together their thoughts and their appraisals of your performance. And so we have a summary here, which has all of the fields filled out. But then I put together these comments because it would be, we would literally have to continue to a second night if I read through everything that everybody wrote.
Thank you.
So that does become part of a permanent record
Okay.
that goes along with this, and I do have all of them for you. But I put together some comments summarizing some of the thoughts of people who, all the members of the school committee. And Mrs. Zani participated also.
Thank you.
Okay, and so I will read this and then we'll go through the summative. So while the summative form used to evaluate the superintendent of schools is very comprehensive and detailed, it lacks the opportunity to summarize comments of multiple evaluators in one place. Because of this, I've taken the opportunity to add some of the school committee members' comments in memo form. Their original documents become part of the permanent record of this review. I will tell you, I hate this form. So that's just,
I know.
but I can't make it go away, so. While in most areas of the form, indicators are proficient with an overall rating of proficient, there are some areas that stand out as exemplary. The first is professional culture. Mrs. Demas has encouraged collaboration and professional practice at all levels within the district. Her ability to lead effectively and listen thoughtfully have improved the culture in our district, and this has been felt throughout the district over the past year. She's held parent coffees for the community and reiterated in follow-up communication the content of those meetings. She has reached out individually to families in the district to ensure needs are met. She's also brought to fruition the social media communication that the school committee has been asking for years. Most importantly, Louise has also expressed her continuing intent for every student to succeed educationally in Cohasset. Her attention to detail in the area of law, ethics, and policies and adherence to those in those areas, as well as being mindful of collective bargaining agreements and ensuring decisions made do not conflict with those agreements, has also been exemplary. She has worked hard to ensure contracts are executed properly, job descriptions are in order, and to streamline and update forms utilized in the human resources process. Mrs. Demas's ability to analyze data and utilize input from various constituencies has led to studies in early literacy and an ongoing review of the middle school, which will undoubtedly improve student achievement in Cohasset schools. She has been a strong advocate of the use of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, which addresses the multiple learning styles of our students, and stretching social emotional learning to reach all levels within our district. Will have far-reaching impact in engaging all students, personalizing, accommodating diverse learning styles, diversity, student needs, interests, and levels of readiness, as well as ensuring our schools are a place of acceptance into the future. She strongly supports a culture of respect starting from the top down and encouraged from the bottom up, which will also ultimately reflect on students and have an impact on student achievement. When people feel respected, it is their natural reaction to do their best work. Sorry, I should have gotten more water when I got up.
Do you want someone else to read, or do you want to?
No, that's fine, that's fine. Thank you. Mrs. Demas has also embraced and prioritized digital learning at all levels within our staff, encouraging staff to step out of their comfort levels and quote, unquote, try it, with great success and impact on student learning and performance. Sometimes doing things the same way over and over again is the path of least resistance, but seeing how excited the teachers have been over the past year has been enlightening, and in some cases even surprised them. As one school committee member noted, this enthusiasm is something that was not displayed to the school committee prior to her leadership. Early on, communication with all members of the school committee was a challenge when a meeting was not immediate. Louise developed a newsletter-type communication to keep all members informed of goings-on in the district. The challenge will be to add a quote-unquote real-time component to these communications as situations come up that need to be conveyed, addressed with more immediacy. A challenge in the upcoming budget cycle will be conveying capital requests for the schools, as previous requests were not tracked properly, and deciphering what were current requests versus those already met was a challenge. Over the next several months, this should be a work in progress in order to accelerate the request process effectively into the next cycle. In summary, Mrs. Demas has dealt with many day-to-day unexpected situations while also performing the multiple components of a day in the life of a school superintendent. She has met each day, no matter what it held, professionally, effectively, and capably. And we look forward to continued success for our students and all in our district under her leadership.
I'm gonna have to get a higher chair.
You're welcome. So, in summary, under step 1, assess progress toward goals. Under professional practice, those goals were met. Under student learning goals were met and district improvement goals were met. Under step 2, assess performance on standards. Also, just so you know, that this instrument the pagination was wrong. It goes from, it's like page 6 of 10 and then page 7 of 9 or something. It was crazy. So, standard 1, instructional leadership, she was marked proficient. Standard 2, management and operations, proficient. Standard 3, family and community engagement, proficient. And standard 4, professional culture, proficient, with 1 exemplary in that area. Okay, step 3, rate overall summative performance, proficient. And step 4, rate impact on student learning. This is where this form comes into a problem for me. And it clearly was not developed by a human resources person at all.
I also want to say that this was deleted by the state.
Really?
Student impact rating no longer.
Oh, okay, all right,
It's
okay.
incorporated in standard 1.
You're right.
That's fine.
For the teacher, for the
For the,
superintendent.
for the,
teachers,
for the
and I think
teachers
it's-
and the
oh, that's
superintendent?
Maybe,
I don't know.
I have to
I'm not
look.
sure, yeah.
I don't think it's a separate rating.
Yeah.
I think it's incorporated. I'll have to check again, but
We know it's true for the teachers, I don't
Teachers,
know
yeah.
if they've.
I'll
Yeah.
look.
Well, I'll tell you what the rating was
It doesn't
anyway.
matter.
It really doesn't matter.
Well, it was a weird one, that's why I.
It was a very
Yeah.
weird one.
Yeah.
So, what I did was I took all of the comments and the check boxes and I marked you on the line between moderate and high because you've been here for 1 year. Some of the programs and processes that you put into place are not fully developed. It's a multiple year goal. So, you're getting there.
The potential is very high.
The future is bright.
Yes.
Under professional practice, where your goals start, and this is another thing that's funny, because the way the form is lined up doesn't necessarily line up with the numbering of the goals, and I said to Louise, wait a minute, this doesn't work, when Jennifer was doing the copying for me. But, so we're doing goal number 5 first, and you have met that goal, which includes, it's standard 4, professional culture, and it deals with participation in the new superintendent induction program. I do have one question on the induction program.
Yes.
Is there any way that we get feedback for
Yes.
participation?
Yes, and that is on me. And if I'm going to do a self-reflection on this, I really should have given you more information on what was going on.
Okay.
This year in particular was a universal design for learning for Louise as part of the program, because it needed to be a bit tailor-made for me, and it was difficult for me to define. Because I've been in the district and I was part of developing the strategic plan,
Uh-huh.
much of this year in the induction was what is the strategic plan and how to develop one for the district. So.
You already knew that.
Right, but what I do need, and I will get to you, is a summary of what this year really did for me.
Mhm.
And it's twofold. It was obviously working with Jim Marini, who is absolutely fantastic, former superintendent and personal coach. And the items that he helped me tailor make as part of the whole group in Marlboro. So I will get that to you. And
Great.
part of that was, and the delay for that too, was because the leadership team just finished its discussion on part of the superintendent's induction program was doing two surveys of the leadership team. The last one was on how effective are we as a team. And what came out of it, because we are only 11, was very difficult to kind of wrap my head around where was the feeling. So we just had a meaningful discussion yesterday on how effective are we as a team and where do we need to go. And I have to say that they gave me some great feedback. It was very exciting. One of them was get rid of all the paper and let's become more paperless, which was just what we started to do yesterday. I came in without an agenda, everyone with a laptop, and there we were. The other one was meaningful about how we address personnel and how everyone needs to participate in how we communicate. So that was an outcome of the new superintendent's program. That was a direct outcome as to how do we communicate, how do we become better. And I heard from Carolyn yesterday, and we had the same agreement. We met till about 5:30. We started a little after 2, and we all felt it was one of the most productive meetings and most worthwhile meetings that we'd had. And that was what the new induction program has done. It's given me avenues to begin very meaningful conversations, and making difficult conversations easier. That one was probably the most valuable. The survey to staff was also part of that individual mentoring where I could filter things out, but I will put that together for you.
Okay, great.
Cause it says on your benchmark, rubric evaluation rating assignments to proficiency, on the,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
practice, I was like, oh, where's the rubric with the proficient?
Okay, so goal number 1 was student learning, standard 1 instructional leadership. And it dealt with priorities in the strategic and technology plans, implementing UDL, talking about diverse learners, work collaboratively documenting areas of the strategic plan, visiting 10 classrooms before May to assess progress, and et cetera, et cetera. And that ranking was met. Goal number 2, student learning, standard 1 instructional leadership, which again is standard 4, also professional culture. And that one was on the line between significant progress and met, again, because you're still working on the middle school.
I think that's very generous, actually.
Yeah, you have 2 X's.
You have 2 X's.
So one
Yeah, I
between
do.
some
One
progress.
between some progress, and that reflects people's rankings. There was maybe one that was, and the headings aren't on this page. They're only on the previous page. So again, flipping back. So some progress and significant progress and met. So you've got 2 rankings on that line. And that's based on real comments from
Yep.
members of the school committee. And then the next is goal number 3, district improvement,
Can I just-
standard.
Can I ask one question on
Yeah.
that one? Louise, is it your intent to roll goal number 2 over to next year in some way, shape, or form?
I'd like to address that one, but can I wait till the end?
Yeah,
Sure.
that's fine.
Yep. Okay, district improvement, establish clear documentation of job responsibilities, expectations, establish strong due dates, responsible behaviors by staff. Deals, and I dealt with that in my summary comments where, you're making sure that all of the documentation for everything related to people is fixed, redone, realigned, and you met that goal. There was one person who said you were exemplary in that regard.
Okay, who do I give the sticker to?
I'm not telling you, you'll have to read 5,000 pages to find out. Goal number 4 is standard 3, family and community engagement. And I'm not gonna read all of this because there's a lot of different steps, actions, and benchmarks. But you met expectations there, and there was 1 exemplary ranking. Goal number 6, district improvement, standard 4, professional culture. And you met that goal. Just the feeling that you met that goal, number 6. The next page is blank for other goals, if any. 6 of 10, 7 of 10. Yeah, one of them just, the paging is just weird. All right, so then superintendent's performance rating for standard 1 instructional leadership. 1A is curriculum, ensures that all instructional staff design effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons with measurable outcomes. Proficient. Under instruction, ensures that practices in all settings reflect high expectations regarding content and quality of effort and work, engage all students, and are personalized to accommodate diverse learning styles, needs, interests, and levels of readiness. You were proficient with 1 exemplary ranking in that one. 1C, assessment, ensures that all principals and administrators facilitate practices that propel personnel to use a variety of formal and informal methods and assessments to measure student learning, growth, and understanding, and make necessary adjustments to their practice when students are not learning. Proficient. Evaluation, ensures effective and timely supervision and evaluation of all staff in alignment with state regulations and contract provisions. Proficient. And data-informed decision-making, uses multiple sources of evidence related to student learning, including state, district, and school assessment results and growth data to inform school and district goals and improve organizational performance, educator effectiveness, and student learning. Proficient. And there were some very interesting comments in that section.
Can't wait.
It's a teaser.
About
And
daring,
the trailer was.
basically about daring to take risks and eliminate some testing modes that you think maybe aren't as effective as they used to be considered. So I think that that's good. So overall, your rating for standard 1 was proficient. Superintendent's performance rating for standard 2, management and operations. Environment, develops and executes effective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, emotional, and social needs. Proficient. Human resources management and development, implements a cohesive approach to recruiting, hiring, induction, development, and career growth that promises high quality and effective practice. Proficient with 1 exemplary. Scheduling and management information systems, uses systems to ensure optimal use of data and time for teaching, learning, and collaboration, minimizing disruptions and distractions for school level staff. Proficient. Law, ethics, and policies, understands and complies with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, and ethical guidelines. Proficient. Fiscal systems, develops a budget that supports the district's vision, mission, and goals, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district and school level goals and available resources. Proficient. So overall, in standard 2, you were ranked proficient. Superintendent's performance rating for standard 3, family and community engagement. Engagement actively ensures that all families are welcome members of the classroom and school community and can contribute to the effectiveness of the classroom, school, district, and community. Proficient. Sharing responsibility, continuously collaborates with families and community stakeholders to support student learning and development at home, school, and in the community. Proficient with 1 exemplary. Communication, engages in regular 2-way culturally proficient communication with families and community stakeholders about student learning and performance. Proficient. And family concerns, 3D, addresses family and community concerns in an equitable, effective, and efficient manner. Proficient. Overall rating for standard 3 was proficient. Superintendent's performance rating for standard 4, professional culture. Commitment to high standards, fosters a shared commitment to high standards of service, teaching, and learning with high expectations for achievement for all. You were ranked proficient with 2 exemplaries. Cultural proficiency, ensures that policies and practices enable staff members and students to interact effectively in a culturally diverse environment in which students' backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges are respected. Proficient. 4C, communication, demonstrates strong interpersonal, written, and verbal communication skills. Proficient. Continuous learning, develops and nurtures a culture in which staff members are reflective about their practice and use student data, current research, best practices, and theory to continuously adapt practice and achieve improved results. Models these behaviors in his or her own practice. Proficient. Shared vision, successfully and continuously engages all stakeholders in the creation of a shared educational vision in which every student is prepared to succeed in post-secondary education and become a responsible citizen and global contributor, proficient with 2 exemplaries. And managing conflict, employs strategies for responding to disagreement and dissent, constructively resolving conflict, and building consensus throughout a district or school community, and you were ranked proficient with 1 exemplary. So overall, your rating for standard 4 was proficient. And that is the end.
Just beginning.
Exactly.
Good for you for reading all that.
Exactly. Well, sorry, I kind of lost my voice here and there. So this is the original copy, the original signed copy. And then you have an extra copy there, so one goes in your personnel file and one
Okay.
goes in the, so if you want to have that, of course, thank you. And again, some of the comments reflected some people's, not concerns, but thoughts on areas for improvement which, you know, deal with communicating with other boards. I mean, certainly what you were handed when you first walked through the door was a challenge. And I think we all agree that you've met the challenge.
It's
So-
been interesting.
Never a dull day in Cohasset.
If I may reflect,
Yes.
I think you're very fair, and I thank you for all of that. And I will respond to goal number 2, that's the middle school. Very honestly, I'd have rated myself lower than you did. I think that is a real address, it's a frustration. I did take a risk on that.
We applaud you for taking
Yes.
that risk.
I think it was, I think
We
it's a
support
risk.
you in taking that risk.
Yeah, don't beat yourself up over that one. I think it's a risk worth taking, and I think that
I don't regret taking it.
I think it will evolve,
I didn't
but it's not
consider
gonna
it a
be
one-year
easy.
goal.
No, and
So,
it wasn't meant
that's
to be a
why.
1-year goal,
Right.
it was meant to be at least a 2-year goal.
Right, that's how I
Mhm.
looked at it.
It's frustrating to see where it has not gone,
Right.
or where I do not perceive it has gone, and, I need to really think that through, particularly with, everything that was shared tonight,
Yeah.
and have some serious conversations on what is the strategic plan for this, and it really does have to be a mini strategic plan, like what is your vision, what is the vision? I may have to take the hold on that and say, it's my vision, and this is what has to happen, so how are you going to get there? I don't know what that will look like.
I think that selecting Pat will be very helpful in that regard.
Yes, it will be. I just want to be very careful that he
It's
does
not
not
his job.
become the middle school
No,
person.
no.
Right.
It's not his job, but he may be able to kind of help you brainstorm ways to
Mhm.
effect the change.
I guess I think, I had thought on this as this whole discussion was going on. I was looking at how we have looked at, this, the STARS program, how we have looked at our special education delivery. And sometimes it's really hard to evaluate what you're doing when you're in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And it made me
External.
start to wonder, is this not the best way to go about this and really get the result of what we're trying to ask? Because if you can't, and I'm not saying this is necessarily the case, I'm not sure if what we're trying to ask can be answered while you're doing your job at the middle school and while you're in the middle of it, so.
Maybe it needs to have fresh eyes on the situation and,
It's a big, I think it's big what we're looking for, so.
Yeah, that's
It's a
Right.
big project, and
Yes.
it's not clear, it's trying to see clearly in muddy water. And that's the best way I can see it. It's very difficult to filter out stuff and know where we're going when we've been doing it a certain way for
It's
so long.
muddy water to us because we're swimming in it, you know?
Right.
I think that's, the thing that I worry most about is that I so badly want this to be successful and
Agreed.
strategic and not tactical. And I do think stepping back and reflecting on it, because perhaps going about it the same way, and I, you know, maybe not, maybe including it as a goal for next year is the right thing, maybe not. I want it to be successful, so I think we need to step back and say, what is the right way to move this forward?
I feel it needs to be a goal. I think it needs to be a refined goal. I think it has to be more specific and measurable. I don't think this was a particularly well-written goal, when I reviewed. Wow, did I give them that? It was a well-written goal, it just wasn't, I think it needed to be.
well, you didn't know what it looked
Yeah,
like.
that's.
Right, it needs to be clear and more direct.
You knew what, you know
I
what
don't-
we needed, but you don't know how to get us to the finish line because there are so many different components in it.
I don't
And
think you should be setting easy goals for yourself too,
No.
that's not stretching yourself as a professional either, to
Right.
just, I can do that, no problem. So,
I do need to do some reflecting and find out where I want to go or where we need to go from here. I think we've come a long way. I have put a few things in place though, from the self-reflection. And one of them was that I did set up in the job description for all the department chairs and the job responsibility for the assistant superintendent, to have regular meetings with the department chairs once a month to discuss curriculum and alignment. And then to continue that discussion with the elementary school principals, so that the job description itself for the assistant principal is more toward aligning things than developing curriculum as a whole. That seems to be lacking, for the same reason that I really made it clear to the team yesterday that Sue's role is largely the implementation of bringing your own device, but that she is a district person and seeing the alignment of use for digital resources. So I'm trying to make all of those alignment. That was one. What I've also done with the initiative of bringing Patrick on board is right now I do the evaluation for the principals and for Mary Buchanan, for the director, and for the assistant superintendent. And I've been very harsh on Susan. What I did for John was amazing.
he has a new name.
So
yeah, she renamed him.
Yes.
That's how the waiver got through.
Patrick is going to be the co-evaluator for the principals.
Oh, that's good.
So he will be attending meetings and seeing them in the classroom and looking at that so that it's a more cohesive evaluation of both the curriculum and the supervision. So those have been a few changes, and hopefully it'll make a change in what we do for that piece. I've also set up more frequent meetings with the principal of the high school, because I think that is a bigger piece. More things happen that shouldn't wait for a month. I have a monthly meeting right now, so that will happen. I do meet with Lisa every 2 weeks right now at the minimum, sometimes more often. And I will be working with her again, mentoring. I'm looking at an outside mentor for Patrick for 2 reasons. One, he volunteered. He is someone that has worked here before with Bob at Osgood, but is also a present mentor for Patrick.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing to have Patrick identify his own, make his own identity, but also to have a new set of eyes on what this job may look like. so it would bring new ideas to the district. So I think that may play into an amount of reflection. I think you've been realistic. I thank you for your feedback. So, there it is.
You're welcome.
And I have to say that the packet you gave us, the mid-cycle review,
Yeah.
was instrumental in
Those
my
changes.
ability to, so, I kept on going back to this and then the document behind it, which had all the,
Yeah.
it was organized really well when I finally got around to it.
It made this very non-stressful for me,
Yeah.
because I had
Yeah.
all the material, so I said to Jean, do I need, it's like going to the prom, do I need to bring corsage, you know, do I need to bring something? And she said, no,
No,
it's just,
yourself.
you've already given it, so that
Yeah.
made it just so much easier.
As I was reviewing all of this, I was like, oh my gosh, next year I'm gonna walk around with a thing and like check off everything. I'll get a little checkbox of things.
That's funny.
Well, and we should
Anyway.
double check and see if, we should always keep on top of whether or not they're revising that form, because as I said,
It's the
And-
latest one on the website.
yeah, I'm
There's-
sure
They
it
didn't write
is,
it.
I'm sure it is, but clearly
It's
was
easy
not written, developed by any human resources professional, because you don't go from
Right.
needs improvement to proficient in
Right, there should
any
be one on
review.
either side of
something, yeah.
proficient.
Yeah.
It's as
At any
difficult
rate.
with giving teacher ratings as well, because those are the ratings.
Yep,
However, in educator evaluation, it's much more concrete, because it's just easier to know, wow, you just didn't meet this, and this is why. Or it's just very difficult to go to the exemplary, because in the educator, it's modeling. So how much have you modeled, where have you modeled, who do you have, did you have? It's not the perfect instrument.
Right.
It's
And-
better than what we've had.
in the human resources world, there are very few exemplary ratings.
There should be, it should be few,
Yeah, because if you're doing your job, you're proficient.
that's right.
You know, if you're stretching out of your comfort zone and getting great
That's right.
results back, you're exemplary, but there should never be more than maybe one or two in exemplaries in.
It's
Oh,
true,
okay.
because if it's exemplary all over, where are you going?
And
Right.
instead of
Right.
three,
There's no place to go, which is not
To grow,
realistic.
right.
but instead of three boxes or four, there should be a fifth. You know, just so that there's some middle developing.
Are you kidding me?
No, it would be developing is
Right,
what it would
correct.
be, and there's none of that in these forms. It's just
I
awkward.
appreciate that you could give comments, at least, though. It made me think of narrative report cards, like, which you
Right.
really,
Right.
if you so choose, you can
Right.
really be descriptive. Which is
I think-
often more useful than just some check in a box, whether it's a great rating or a not great rating.
Right.
Like, you still don't necessarily know that means if there's no backup to it, so,
Mhm.
anyway.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I was
they'd
just
like to add?
gonna say that, one, it's been a very enjoyable year.
Thank you.
And it's been refreshing and exciting to have the teachers come. I think that's been my favorite part of the whole year, is having them do the try-its and see how enthusiastic they are about it, and I look forward to more of that. But I hope that none of this was a surprise, because I think we have, as a team, an extraordinarily great working relationship amongst
Agreed.
all of us.
Mhm.
I think we're respectful of each other and our roles, and when you have that type of relationship, there are no surprises.
Right.
And you kept us posted, even with all the documents, it still was a lot to go back and say, oh yeah, I remember that, I remember this, and it was very, very helpful and a good reflection for us as a committee, I think, to go back as we start to look at
Right.
where are our goals. I know it's on my list to do, but red light, green light. But to see, okay, now how do we rate ourselves, and how did we do on our goals? And I'm looking forward to FY18, and I think there'll be challenges, and
I think we've learned a lot over the past year, though.
yeah.
You know, things that just, we were treading. And this year has been pretty focused, and we've made some great progress in a lot of different areas. I think it's been a great year.
I think we're moving. I think it's good. I think too that you're right, we do have to be clear, but I also see the leadership team as having grown tremendously. And we keep
Absolutely.
saying it's become, one of our goals was to disagree respectfully, and it's amazing what a goal can do. That we can actually be very transparent with one another and say, I just don't get it. What were you thinking? And then at the end of that discussion saying, how do you like your coffee?
Right.
That we can actually do that. And I think that the response around the table has been getting to know one another better. We're going to continue that on Monday when I'm taking everyone out for lunch. And we're going to discuss the book we all read, which is, and I have to give credit to both Patrick and to John for having read a very female-oriented novel. But,
And enjoyed it. You haven't quite finished it yet.
and John's wife is very happy to read it, because she has done. It's actually Judy Picoult, Small Great Things. And Small Great Things is the novel about a black nurse who is in neonatal and encounters a white supremacist who says, don't get near my baby, but the baby dies. And her life falls apart, but we are looking at the nuances of what are we really portraying to our students of our own biases. So that's the premise of Do You Know Your Students? And we are having Manuel Fernandez, who is the principal of the upper school in Cambridge, come meet with us during our retreat to talk about what biases do we unintentionally give our students in the classroom. So that's where this book is going, and it's, it's a fun book. It's a summer reading book.
If it were a movie, it'd be called a chick flick, but
It's a chick flick. But it's things like, he's going to talk to us about things like, what's a little black lie? Does that mean a white lie is terrible? Black lie is terrible, but a white lie isn't? A little white lie, or backhanded compliment, left-handed compliment, does that mean right-handed people are better than left? So some of the things that we inadvertently say that may have actually implications on our students. So that's where we're going.
Jordan's trying to steal
A
that.
little side into our retreat, among other things in the strategic plan.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is the appointment of our interim business manager, or reappointment of our interim business manager.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yes, thanks.
So as you know, John has finished, or is finishing 1 year and has received a waiver to stay with us for another year while we continue to search for someone for a permanent business manager position with us. But we do need to appoint him. So if I could have a motion to appoint John Tuffy as interim business manager for the 2017-2018 year.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, roll call, please.
I, Barbara Steffen.
Hi, Katie Dugan.
I, Gina Stino.
Hi, Ellen Mar.
Hi, Jen Madden.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thought I'd let budget and finance second.
It's been a fun year. I look forward to the next year.
Good, good.
And
Now you know, now you know who we are, so
Yes.
should be an interesting year. So the next item on the agenda is reading of policy JECA, enrollment of the children of school department personnel, second read. And
Is this the
before
first
we
or a
start,
second read?
this is the second.
This is the second,
This
even
is the
though
second.
it, okay, I didn't know if we actually got through, if that
We
was.
did get through it, but with, there were lots of
Yeah, it was
suggestions
so
for change.
massive, I wasn't sure if it still counted, so, okay, so it is the second read.
Yeah, and you know
Alright.
what, if people still have questions and want further refinement, we can move to a third read, that's not a problem.
Oh, okay.
But before we start this conversation, I don't know if everybody saw their email today. MASC has released a new online policy book. So the
Exciting.
policies have been revised and refreshed, so you might wanna take a look, people on the policy subcommittee.
Yeah, I mean, I had asked regarding some of the ones we've been reviewing, if there's anything new on the horizon, and they didn't mention anything in particular.
Yeah, this isn't coming up now, it may be dead
I
already.
talked previously about things on the horizon, but didn't.
I kept refreshing.
Well, that's
it.
exciting. Yay.
Well, it's,
Okay.
you're on the listserv, right? You get things from MASC?
You know what,
Okay,
I
I
need
will,
to get-
I will forward
Okay.
this email to both of you. I'll
Oh,
forward
great.
it to
I just
everyone
go
so
to
that you
there.
have it, just in
I
case
got
you
it.
didn't get, okay. All right. But I'll forward it to you and then you can read it in all its glory. I actually thought it was kind of exciting.
no, it,
That's as a policy person for 6 years. I'm happy not to do it anymore, thank you very much, both of you, but. Anyway, so enrollment of the children of school department personnel. Does anybody have any further comments on this one?
I have two small changes.
Okay.
Nothing's- I don't think anything's, the first paragraph works for me now,
Okay,
thumbs up.
yep,
In the second paragraph, second sentence, I think we need to scratch the lottery system for it. Shouldn't it read, they may participate in full-day kindergarten on a first-come, first-served basis, provided there is no lottery waiting list of Cohasset residents?
yeah, I think that makes sense. What do you think about that, Louise?
I think you're right. I never read it that way, but it's redundant.
Yeah.
Because obviously the lottery's filled. if we're
Right,
taking-
you're not participating, so,
Right.
and interestingly, it, in the sentence below, as it relates to preschool,
Right.
it's not there, so
Right.
I
Yeah.
just think it didn't get struck.
so just take out in the lottery system for admission into, right?
It would read, they may participate in full-day kindergarten on a first-come, first-served basis, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all
Or
right.
should it say they may be enrolled?
I'm sorry, I read it like dependents of professional staff members are not automatically eligible to participate in full-day kindergarten, they may participate in the lottery system.
It is enrolled, not
Yeah.
participate.
Okay.
They may enroll, or they may be enrolled.
I think may be enrolled. So that should read, they may be enrolled
Mhm.
Wait a second, where are we?
in this, that same sentence,
Second sentence.
yeah. They may,
Uh-huh.
so take out the words participate in the lottery system for, and add the words be enrolled. So they may be enrolled in,
The other thing that does
Full-day
not make
kindergarten.
sense is that there is no lottery waiting list for Cohasset students if we do that. And it really should read, they may be enrolled in full-day kindergarten on a first-come, first-served basis, provided the lottery for Cohasset students has been met, right?
Well, there's
But
only,
how about-
there's only a lottery if there's more, so the way
Yeah.
I read it is that,
No lottery waiting list.
Yeah,
there's
yes.
no,
No
there's
lottery
generally no lottery, the
of
only reason we have a
Cohasset
lottery
residents.
is when we're oversubscribed.
Yes.
So that was my,
We're just waiting list.
yeah,
You don't really care how you
That's
got
true.
to
Yes.
having a waiting list.
so take out the word lottery.
But then, what if there's, what if stuff happens over the summer and?
There wouldn't be a waiting list for
that get
Cohasset
confusing?
residents. We'd adjust. There wouldn't be a waiting list for Cohasset residents. We'd have to adjust because we need to, if people want to enroll their kids, we need to let them, right?
So you could enroll, like, what if it's February and there's room and then, so full day fills with a dependent of a teacher and then 10 Cohasset parents come and wanna,
I think the way
But I
this,
guess-
Wash your mouth out with soap.
the way this was envisioned, at least as I remember it, was that we have the registration deadline. Registration deadline passes and we have more people for full day than we have spots. Then we have to hold a lottery. And as a teacher, you're not able to participate in that lottery. If the registration date passes and there is no lottery, as I read this policy, if you're a teacher, you've got a full day spot. And if August comes and there's a resident that moves in,
that's too bad.
it's too bad.
Correct.
They've gotta and I'm
Too late.
okay
Yeah,
with
me
that.
too.
That's correct, that's exactly what it
Okay.
is.
If you move in
Okay.
in August as a resident,
Set up the classes and everything.
yeah.
The deadline has been met for the
You
lottery.
move in August and then what?
if you move in August as a resident, and there's no room in full day, per this policy, you're not bumping a teacher off of a full day spot.
You're enrolling them in the half-day program.
The resident gets a half day.
Residents, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Cause we had always envisioned it as, we only held a lottery in the years where there's oversubscription. Normally, there is no lottery, the registration date comes and goes, you either have a full day or you have a half-day slot.
Yes, typically this year, we had a teacher ask for her children to be admitted into it was preschool, but it's the same
Yeah.
theory. And she waited until the lottery was filled, and then we discovered we had spots. And by the time we came back to her, she said, I've got other plans. But she did wait it out.
Yep.
Okay, so it's okay, the rest of it is written.
And the only other change that I
Lottery waiting list.
had.
Are we keeping lottery waiting list or just waiting list?
there's no lottery waiting
Okay,
list
got it.
of Cohasset residents.
And then in the second to last sentence that begins, relates to preschool, that they may participate in the, I would just insert preschool program, just to be clear, cause the one above is full day kindergarten.
That's the third sentence. right
Yeah.
up here.
Right there. I was just,
Oh,
just to make it parallel construction with
Yeah.
the full day above, I would just clarify that you're referring to the preschool program there.
So it's participants
says-
in the preschool program?
They may participate in the preschool program if there is no lottery for the program and no waiting list of Cohasset residents.
Cause I was just going, if you go two sentences above, it would read,
Yeah.
they may participate in the full day kindergarten.
So maybe we should have one more read on this next time?
Yeah, we're gonna change that to enroll.
Yeah, do you wanna change your participate down below with your preschool to be enrolled like you have up above as well?
Okay. Okay.
All right, so we'll add this to the agenda for next time, and it should be a slam dunk. So JECA.
And then just Jen, for comments, I thought, Jen had sent some comments and I didn't respond because I couldn't respond, but she didn't know that, so, but at any rate, I think they're worth addressing, like,
Yeah, we can't deliberate
Yeah.
via email if we're a member of a specific.
yes. So we went
You're
over
a
that at the
quorum,
beginning.
you're automatically a
You're an
quorum.
automatic quorum,
Oh, because it's a subcommittee.
Yes.
Yes.
Your
Okay.
quorum
and there were only
changes
two
from-
members in the subcommittee.
Okay.
But,
Which makes it really inconvenient to be on a subcommittee with somebody.
I think
Yeah.
the preschool comment, Katie, you had a comment about qualifying the preschool, so I think that solves that. That, I thought it was okay to leave it singular,
Okay.
cause you can have multiple singular children. Jen had asked about, in addition to the first couple of lines, or the second line, should it say dependents, but I think a dependent, whether you have, you
Yeah,
could say, this is
I
a
think
dependent,
a
this is
dependent
dependent,
is
this is
fine.
dependent, it's fine. If anyone.
Because you could okay, now we're wordsmithing. That A could be any dependent.
I think a dependent is just fine.
No, but I'm just saying, if you
But yes, I
changed it,
understand, yeah.
if you changed it for plural,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, that,
and the topic for the third paragraph, did we wanna include, and the student is in good standing, but I think
It's up
it
above.
says students must be in good standing, and you have to apply to Louise every year anyway, so I think that covers it.
Yep.
And that was contract language, but I think it matches up fine,
okay.
so, okay, great. Those were my comments, but.
All right, so next is report from subcommittees of the school committee. There was a scheduled meeting for AEC on Monday, but it's been postponed to July. And then I sent out an email as an FYI that Cohasset was awarded their second year Green Communities Grant in the amount of $177,400. So that's all good news. So now we need to align for capital budget purposes what's already been done on that spreadsheet and what hasn't dropped off. And, you know, what's on the to-do list from Brian Joyce and the alternative energy folks, so.
Yeah, cause when Ellen circulated the follow-up, and thank you for
Yeah.
doing that, I mean, this is a long list. You
Yeah.
can't buy all of this for $177,000, so
No.
my question still remains, out of this list of ideas,
Yeah, what are we
which ones are
actually
we
going for?
Exactly.
Which items on that list are the most important? Like HVAC controls for heating systems would be, you know, like,
Right.
things like that.
Well, it sounded like, at least my impression from the conversation that we had, was that Brian Joyce may actually have narrowed this down.
There may even be things that are on this list. I think that Ellen's summary is great, and I think that she's probably captured all of it, but you just never know, those sneaky people.
This was
Sometimes
just
do
the
things
minutes.
and we don't know.
That was the minutes from,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, no, I know. I know. I
From
actually had,
October.
I think I had put that in a packet a while back. I definitely circulated an agenda that, or minutes that had a list of items, but I don't remember when it was.
I guess just for my comment last time was just, at some point, I would like to know what is on Brian/the AEC's list specifically as it relates to the new green initiatives grant, and maybe it's not flushed out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he quite often isn't available for night meetings, so we wouldn't get him to come to one of our meetings, but maybe we could do a daytime subcommittee
Well,
meeting
why don't we just send that to him and ask him
and
to,
ask him.
to update what is
update it.
on the actual list of the grant that was approved, cause that's from October, isn't it, like
Right.
October 16th?
And the original grant funds could have been in excess of, it could have been about $250,000 or $264,000,
Well,
so
it says how much was on there requested for the phase 2 of the grant.
I think it's over 200,000.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it, but I remember it being 250 was the
Yeah.
original number.
It was either 250 or 264 when they first started talking about the funds, but we got 177.4.
Yeah.
So there are probably more people in more towns in the program qualifying, they have to divvy up the money equally, so. So some of those items that may have been on the short list may be deferred, but I would think that as the new town hall program, discussions evolve, we'll get less, they'll get more, because they're gonna need it, starting from scratch with the new town hall. So, just my,
When does grant money have to be used up?
doesn't have, I don't know if there's an end date on it. I don't know if it's like a grant that has to be used by the end of the fiscal year, it might be. I don't think that subject's ever come
Cause
up
I
in a
don't
meeting.
think the new town hall's gonna be till 20.
No, I know, but I'm just
19.
saying that as that process evolves, we would be getting less. Because we potentially could qualify for, as a town, for these grants every year,
Mhm.
as long as we're making progress towards the
right.
20% savings in green
Right.
initiatives.
Louise, just maybe maybe it makes sense to tackle this differently, because do you meet with Brian Joyce and Mark Kelly and Chris Senior ever relative to facilities matters?
I meet with Mark quite regularly as he saunters through.
Okay.
Brian Joyce, no.
Okay. To me, this feels like again, my only point is like operationally, we should know
I think
Yeah.
what
we
they
could-
plan on doing for our building.
I can do that.
Absolutely.
I
I think we
ask
all
him to
agree
meet
on
with
that.
Brian. I have other pieces of questions for Brian, so.
Maybe it's just package it together in a meeting where we can get details about what are they really planning relative to the
I have-
AEC.
I have a couple of other things to ask Brian. One of them is we looked at the traffic pattern here that congests the roadway every afternoon. That's something to talk to Brian about. I spoke to Bill Quigley the other day about, it's something for Brian to look at. It's a DPW kind of thing.
Okay,
So I can add that to it.
okay.
Okay.
You have yours highlighted, you said? Yeah, please.
Yeah,
So I'll make a copy of that, so I
yeah,
can-
that's great. I just,
I'll return the original.
no,
Okay, does anybody else have any reports from subcommittees or?
Went to the Osgood School Council,
Oh, great.
meeting, and, it's just a very busy time of year. They talked about, Alex Sullivan and Marcia Campbell met with sort of a small group of families about things that they can do with kids over the summer to stop the summer slide. And then they're sending out a newsletter to help with that as well. And it's gonna be, they've already sent out the One Book, One School, which is cute.
That's
They have-
awesome.
We've gotten our book already.
that's awesome.
It's about how one person can make a difference, and they'll be doing some projects next year around that theme. And they have done a lot of field trips. The kindergarten, there were 2 kindergarten field trips, and they went to places in town. So they did the fire station, the post office, the arts center, and the senior center, and the library.
All in one day?
In two groups went. And each group did something different. They didn't do all, so I think the first group did like the fire, police, and then the next group did the senior center. And it went well. Kindergarten move-up day is was today, I guess. And, they talked about how, they did kindergarten screening in April with the Dial 4 assessment, and then they mailed the results home. So that was a little different this year
Yeah.
than in prior years.
Yeah.
They felt like they needed to kind of close the loop on that with parents.
Did they have like an orientation today of some sort for
They
kindergarten?
did,
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
was, you come in,
Yeah.
They did.
That's cool.
Yeah.
it wasn't with your teacher, but it was just.
Right.
They're trying to sort of organize a informal meet and greet for incoming kindergarten parents on the playground, like in late August.
I think it's called Popsicle Day. I
Something
think that's
like
what it was
that.
called last year.
Yeah.
Great.
Is that all? Okay, great.
I had, one just quick question for the committee. Last year, we did the annual
Yeah.
agenda.
Needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, I was, Ellen and I worked on it last year. I think we got it 80% right, but there's definitely some things that we could adjust. I don't know who wants to tackle it this year. I'm happy to work with somebody on it. Jean, I mean,
Yeah.
you were knee deep in this, with
Yep.
Louise, maybe if you and I,
I was gonna say that it makes sense for me to be involved in it.
Ellen, if, I know you've got on your plate
I'm
that.
good.
Yeah,
Unless
sure.
you
I was gonna-
You wanna arm wrestle me for it?
No, thanks. Hey, I'll give you the goal update, I'll give you the agenda.
Alright, so you and I can, find some time to meet on this.
Yes, definitely.
Great.
Okay. So then the next item is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any comments?
I just have one, Connolly needs to be spelled correctly on page 2.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
The second line.
On the second line and on the.
There's a couple places.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it is in a couple of places.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I did have something, but I was doing this on my iPad in a dorm room. on a bed that was boosted at the highest level.
I don't think I wanna hear any more of this
It-
story.
Oh, where is it?
Don't we shut off after a few hours?
I should have made a note.
No, not yet.
Is this where, I'm sorry, I'm like, I could not figure out that way one.
Yes, exactly.
I was having like an alignment issue. Like, that makes sense. Well, I thought it was pointing a line above, I'm like, but that doesn't make sense.
I can't remember what it was. It's a little late for me.
I thought they were really good though.
No, they were. Okay, so, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, June 7th, 2017, pending potential update at the next meeting? If I find it, I'll
So
find it.
moved.
If I don't, I don't.
Second.
So that was moved by Mrs. Mars, seconded by Mrs. Madden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I do not have any topics that were not anticipated. Louise, do we need to go into executive session for anything? Woo-hoo, it's 11 o'clock.
Good answer.
Okay, so do I
Right.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that's at 11:01.
I am sharing information, the impact, the student impact rating was deleted both from the educator and administrator.
Oh, okay, good.
But Desi hasn't updated